Welcome to Calming Bedtime Journeys channel. Tonight we step into the bitter winter of 1316 when rain has ruined harvests. Roads have vanished beneath snow, and a medieval castle becomes both refuge and trap. What does safety feel like when the walls are strong, yet the granaries are thinning? What happens when warmth belongs to rank? Bread carries more power than silver, and the cold seems clever enough to creep through solid stone. You stand on a white road at dusk, watching a castle rise above the frozen fields. Its towers look stern, dark, and almost comforting from a distance. Smoke coils from the roofs, but you cannot tell whether it promises supper or merely damp firewood. Somewhere beyond those walls, servants hurry, guards stamp up their feet, and hungry families count each remaining loaf. So, before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you are listening from, along with your local time. Now, dim the lights and imagine your boots sinking into snow beside the road. The year is 1316 during the crisis later, called the Great Famine, across much of northern Europe. Repeated bad weather has damaged crops, spoiled hay, weakened livestock, and driven food prices upward. The castle before you is not untouched by this misery. It is simply better defended from it. The wind moves across the fields with a thin, steady whistle. You hear bare branches knocking together near a frozen ditch. Your cloak smells of wet wool, horse sweat, and the smoke from distant cottages. The fabric has stiffened around your shoulders, and every fold feels cold against your skin. Ahead, the castle stands on a low rise above a village. Its outer walls are built from rough stone, pale beneath frost. Snow rests along the battlements like a careful white border. Narrow windows glow in scattered places, though most remain black and empty. Glass is expensive, so many openings are covered with shutters, horn panels, or oilcloth. You keep walking. The road climbs slowly, curving toward the gate. To your left, strips of farmland disappear beneath the snow. These fields should contain winter grain, but poor weather has left them weak and unreliable. In ordinary years, peasants might still bring eggs, firewood, beans, or salted food to the castle. This winter, every household keeps what little it can. A crow lifts from a fence post. Its wings beat loudly in the still air. For a moment, the sound seems larger than the landscape itself. Near the village edge, several cottages huddle close together. Their roofs sag under snow and smoke leaks through thatch. The smell reaches you in brief waves, mixing peat, straw, manure, and green wood. It is not pleasant, exactly, though it carries the unmistakable warmth of human survival. You notice people watching from doorways. They do not wave. In a hungry year, strangers are measured quickly and kindly thoughts come second. A traveller might bring news, work, disease, or another mouth to feed. Medieval hospitality exists, but winter gives it a very strict budget. The castle offers protection because it stores resources: grain, salt, firewood, ale, livestock, tools, and weapons can be gathered behind walls. That is the mainstream truth beneath the romantic image. A castle is not merely a noble home, it is an organized machine for control, storage, labor, defense, and display. Yet even machines can run short. Historians continue debating how evenly the famine struck different regions and social groups. Written records describe terrible scarcity. Yet local conditions varied widely. Some estates retained reserves, while others suffered almost immediate shortages. Weather, soil, trade routes, leadership, and simple luck all mattered. The castle on the hill may therefore be fortunate, or it may only look fortunate as you approach. The outer ditch becomes visible beneath the snow. It is not a dramatic moat filled with black water and lurking dangers. This one is partly dry, partly frozen, and cluttered with brush. A practical ditch could slow attackers. channel movement, and make ladders harder to place, romance rarely survives close inspection, which is probably why romance prefers moonlight. Behind you, evening gathers over the countryside. The sky has turned the colour of old pewter. A band of pale light remains near the horizon, but the fields are already fading. Snow softens the boundaries between road, ditch, garden, and graveyard. The cold deepens quietly. Within the walls, hundreds of daily needs are competing. Fires require fuel, horses require fodder, people require bread, ale, shelter, clothing, and patience. The Lord's household may include relatives, officials, guards, cooks, clerks, grooms, laundresses, labourers, craftsmen, children, visitors, and dependents. During crisis, additional villagers may seek work, protection, or permission to sleep nearby. Every person changes the arithmetic. You can almost sense that arithmetic moving behind the stone. A steward counts sacks, a cook studies a diminishing barrel, a groom runs rough fingers across a horse's ribs, a lady asks whether candles can be spared for evening prayer. Somewhere, a child complains about cold feet, and an exhausted nurse gives the oldest answer in history, endure a little longer. One curious medieval habit may offer minor comfort. People sometimes warmed beds with heated stones, bricks, or metal warming pans filled with embers. The idea sounds luxurious until you remember the risks. Sparks, smoke, cracked vessels, and scorched bedding could turn comfort into disaster. Still, on a night like this, even a warm brick seems almost magical. The gatehouse now towers above you. Its passage is dark, narrow, and edged with frost. The heavy doors are reinforced with iron straps. Above them, defensive openings allow guards to observe arrivals. The famous habit of pouring boiling oil on enemies was far less common than the stories suggest. Oil was useful, costly, and much too valuable for theatrical generosity. Cold water, stones, timber, and arrows were more practical. You stop before the closed gate, snow gathers along your shoulders, your breath appears in slow white clouds, then disappears. From inside comes the smell of wood smoke, animals, damp straw, and something cooking with onions. It is the finest smell imaginable. The guard calls down, asking your name, purpose, and business. His tone is tired rather than cruel. He has probably repeated these questions many times today. Each answer matters because the castle cannot welcome everyone. Charity, duty, caution, and scarcity are all standing beside him. You look back once more at the darkening road. Far beyond the village, the countryside lies faint under winter. Somewhere out there, roofs leak, grain bins empty, and cattle weaken in their stalls. The castle walls cannot stop the weather, but they can delay its consequences. For now, delay feels like hope. You raise your face toward the gatehouse and give your answer. Chains shift somewhere above. Wood groans against stone. A narrow opening appears between the doors, releasing a ribbon of smoky air into the frozen evening. You step closer, carrying snow on your boots and uncertainty in your chest. The fortress is about to take you in, though not without questions, rules, and watchful eyes. The winter remains outside, some of it follows you through. The gate opens only wide enough for one person to pass. You slip through sideways, brushing your sleeve against rough timber darkened by rain, smoke, and years of handling. The wood feels damp beneath your fingertips. Iron studs press cold through the leather of your glove. Behind you, the opening narrows again, and the winter road disappears with a final scrape of wood across stone. Inside the passage, the air changes. It is not warm, but it is sheltered. The wind becomes a distant moan beyond the gatehouse, while smaller sounds gather around you. Chains clink overhead. A horse stamps somewhere nearby. Water drips steadily from a beam into a shallow puddle. The scent is heavy with wet wool, straw, mud, smoke, and animal breath. A guard waits beside a brazier filled with dull red coals. He wears a padded coat beneath a mail collar, though the metal looks painfully cold. His cheeks are raw from the weather. One hand rests near his belt, not dramatically, but from habit. You give your name again. He asks where you have come from, whom you serve, and whether you carry letters. Such questions are not idle conversation. A castle gate is the narrow throat through which every visitor, message, animal, cart, rumour, and possible threat must pass. Control begins here, long before anyone reaches the noble household. Another guard studies your boots. Mud can reveal a road. Snow can reveal how long you waited outside. A torn hem might suggest hardship, while a fine clasp might suggest rank. Medieval people read clothing carefully because clothing announces wealth, profession, origin, and intention. It also lies occasionally. You are asked whether you carry weapons. A small knife is expected, since nearly everyone uses one for food and daily work. A sword would require explanation. A bow would attract closer attention. Even a respectable traveller can become less respectable after hunger, cold, and several cups of strong ale. The guard holds out his hand. You surrender your knife for inspection. Its handle is worn smooth from use. He turns it once beneath the weak light, then returns it without comment. The blade is practical, ordinary, and therefore uninteresting. That is good. Above you, footsteps cross a wooden floor. The gatehouse contains more than doors and guards. It may include sleeping quarters, storage rooms, defensive chambers, and mechanisms for controlling the entrance. In better weather, clerks or officials might record goods passing through. In winter, attention shifts toward fuel, food, and suspicious strangers. A porter appears from a side room carrying a lantern. The flame flickers behind thin horn panels, giving off less light than you might hope. Glass lanterns exist, but horn is cheaper and less fragile. The warm glow makes the passage seem almost welcoming, though the porter's expression remains careful. He asks whether you seek lodging. You explain that you have business with the household. Perhaps you carry news from a nearby estate. Perhaps you have been sent by a minor official. Perhaps you are simply useful enough to be admitted. In a winter like this, usefulness is a powerful form of identification. The porter listens, then nods. You are permitted farther inside, but not freely. A young servant is told to guide you across the lower yard. This is partly courtesy and partly surveillance. Guests do not wander wherever curiosity leads them. Castles contain private chambers, storerooms, armories, kitchens, workshops, and guarded doors. Hospitality has boundaries. The inner gate opens. You step into a courtyard where snow has been churned into brown slush. Lantern light trembles across walls and roofs. Buildings crowd against the curtain wall, each serving a different purpose. You see stables, workshops, storage sheds, kitchens, and covered passages. The castle is less like a lonely stone monument and more like a cramped village wearing armour. The noise surprises you. Men call to one another beside a cart. A groom curses softly at a nervous horse. Chickens rustle beneath a wooden shelter. Somewhere, a hammer strikes metal with slow, measured blows. The castle does not sleep when darkness arrives. Work merely moves indoors. Your guide walks quickly. You follow, trying not to slip on frozen mud. The ground beneath your boots alternates between slick ice, packed snow, and soft manure. Fine castle living begins with careful foot placement. The grand tapestries will come later. To one side, two men unload bundles of firewood from a sled. The pieces are thin and irregular, gathered from managed woodland or purchased from nearby tenants. Good dry wood is valuable. Wet wood smokes heavily, burns poorly, and fills rooms with irritation. Yet wet wood is often all that remains. A steward's assistant watches each bundle. Fuel must be counted because the castle consumes it constantly. Kitchens burn wood, chambers need fires, smiths need heat, bakers need ovens, guards need braziers, baths when available. Require more fuel than most people can spare during scarcity. Historians disagree about how consistently individual castles maintain detailed winter fuel records. Some estates preserved careful accounts, while others left only scattered evidence. Survival often depended upon local management, but the paperwork has survived unevenly. Your guide glances back to ensure you remain close. Near the stable entrance, steam rises from several horses. Their coats smell rich and earthy in the cold air. A groom rubs one animal with twisted straw, working moisture from its skin. Horses are expensive, useful, and demanding. They need oats, hay, shelter, grooming, and constant attention. During famine, feeding them becomes painful arithmetic. A warhorse may receive priority because it represents military strength and noble status. Cart horses remain essential for hauling fuel and supplies. Lesser animals might receive poorer fodder or be sold before they weaken. A castle can appear powerful from outside while quietly sacrificing its animals one ration at a time. You pass a small shelter where dogs sleep curled together. One raises its head and watches you with pale eyes. Castle dogs may hunt, guard, control vermin, or simply belong to people who love them. Some noble households spend surprising sums on favoured hunting hounds. One quirky detail from medieval accounts is that valuable dogs could receive specially made collars, careful medical attention, and even attendants. Meanwhile, servants freeze beside them. The gentle unfairness of history rarely needs decoration. Ahead, a bell rings once. The note moves through the courtyard, deep and slightly uneven. It may signal an hour, a meal, a change of watch, or a religious duty. Bells organise life where few people own clocks. Their sound reaches kitchens, workshops, chambers, walls and stables. Everyone understands something from it. You pause beneath a covered walkway while a cart crosses the yard. The wheels grind through slush. A barrel is tied behind the driver, its iron hoops crusted with frost. It might hold ale, salted fish, grain, or something less welcome. Every container entering the castle will be noticed. Food stores matter most now. The servant tells you that supplies have arrived late from several villages. Roads are poor, bridges damaged, and tenants unable to deliver what is owed. Some may genuinely have nothing. Others may hide grain for their own families. The castle authorities know both possibilities. Taxes and rents are rarely gentle during crisis. Yet the lord cannot simply demand forever. Dead tenants pay nothing. Abandoned fields produce nothing. A wise household must preserve the community that supports it. Though wisdom is never guaranteed by a noble title, you cross beneath another archway. This second entrance leads toward the more protected inner buildings. A guard stands there with a spear, his boots wrapped in extra cloth against the cold. Cloth wrappings are common when footwear fails. They are not elegant, but elegance does not protect toes. He inspects you briefly. Your guide speaks for you, and the guard steps aside. Trust moves through the castle in small transfers. One person admits you, another escorts you, a third accepts responsibility for your presence. Nobody seems relaxed, though nobody appears panicked. That balance keeps the household functioning. The smell of cooking grows stronger. You detect onions, smoke, boiled grain, and perhaps a trace of meat. Your stomach tightens at once. Hunger makes the castle seem kinder than it is. From a nearby doorway comes a burst of laughter. It stops quickly when someone important passes. Rank shapes sound here. Servants lower their voices. Guards straighten. Children become suddenly innocent. Even dogs may know which footsteps matter. You begin to understand the place. The gatehouse has not merely admitted your body. It has placed you within a system of duties, permission, and invisible boundaries. Every door leads somewhere, but not every door belongs to you. Your guide gestures toward a broad entrance glowing with firelight. Beyond it waits the great hall, where the household gathers beneath smoke, noise, ceremony, and watchful eyes. You approach slowly. Behind you, the gate remains closed against the snow. Ahead, warmth flickers. The doors to the great hall stand open. Warmth reaches you first. Though it is weaker than the glow suggests, the air carries smoke, roasted onions, damp wool, spilled ale, old rushes, and the unmistakable scent of many people gathered too closely. After the frozen courtyard, even this imperfect comfort feels generous. You step across the threshold. The hall rises above you beneath heavy roof beams darkened by years of soot. Firelight moves across plastered walls. Carved wood, hanging cloth, and polished metal. Shadows stretch behind benches and chests. Voices overlap in a steady murmur, broken by laughter, coughing, scraping stools, and the clatter of wooden bowls. This is the castle's public heart. At the far end, a raised platform holds the high table. The lord's household sits there beneath a canopy, separated from everyone else by height, distance, and custom. Rank is built into the room. Where you sit, what you eat, and how close you stand to the fire reveal your place immediately. The arrangement seems simple. It is not. You pause near the entrance while your guide speaks with an usher. The usher studies your clothing, your face, and the condition of your boots. He must decide where you belong without delaying the entire household. Medieval ceremony depends upon countless people making quick judgments while pretending everything happens naturally. Your guide leaves you there. For a moment, you feel the room observing you. Servants glance up from their work. A soldier looks over his cup. Two children whisper beside a bench, then pretend they were discussing something important. A small dog sniffs your cloak and decides you are not worth announcing. The usher points toward a place near the middle. You move carefully between crowded tables. Benches line long boards resting on trestles. These tables can be dismantled after meals, leaving space for sleeping, work, entertainment, or legal business. The phrase about removing the boards has a practical medieval meaning. Since the furniture is temporary by design, your boots brush scattered rushes. Fresh rushes may once have covered the floor, perhaps mixed with herbs that released fragrance when crushed. Tonight, the layer beneath you is damp, flattened, and speckled with crumbs, the pleasant smell of rosemary or lavender, when available. Must compete against smoke, mud, grease, and humanity. Smoke always seems to win. A central hearth burns near the middle of the hall. Flames lick around thick logs, sending sparks upward toward the roof. There may be a vent above, but much of the smoke simply drifts through the room before escaping. Your eyes begin to sting almost immediately. You resist rubbing them. The people nearest the fire enjoy the strongest heat. They also receive the thickest smoke, the occasional spark, and the attention of everyone passing. Comfort arrives with the conditions. Even the best position may require watering eyes and a cloak that smells burned for several days. You take your assigned seat. The bench is hard, narrow, and polished by generations of restless bodies. Warmth from the hearth touches one side of your face while the other remains cool. A draught travels beneath the table and gathers around your ankles. Castles are skilled at offering heat and cold simultaneously. A servant places a wooden cup before you. The drink is ale, weak enough for ordinary use and safer than some local water sources, yet people do drink water during the Middle Ages, despite the stubborn modern myth that everyone avoids it completely. Wells, springs, and rivers remain important, though quality varies by place and season. You lift the cup. The ale tastes sour, grainy, and slightly smoky. It is not refined, but it is nourishing. In a winter of scarcity, Calories matter more than elegance. You drink slowly and feel a little warmth settle into your chest. Across from you sits an older soldier with a scar near his chin. He eats from a shared bowl using a spoon carved from horn. Beside him, a clerk keeps his sleeves carefully raised to avoid the food. Their proximity seems strange until you remember that great halls mix people who would otherwise remain separate. Not everyone is equal. Everyone is visible. A castle's great hall serves many purposes. Meals take place here, but so do meetings, judgments, ceremonies, payments, performances, and displays of loyalty. The Lord's authority becomes physical when dependents gather beneath his roof. Hospitality is therefore both kindness and political theatre. The Lord feeds you. You remember it. At the high table, a steward stands behind the seated nobles. He watches the room while servants bring dishes from the kitchen passage. His position demands attention to supply, etiquette, timing, and household discipline. If bread runs short, cups remain empty, or guests sit in the wrong order, someone will notice, probably everyone. The evening meal begins without dramatic announcement. Bowls arrive in stages, carried by young servants moving with impressive balance. Pottage forms the main dish, thick with grain, onions, peas, and whatever herbs remain available. A few pieces of salted meat appear near the upper tables. Your portion contains no meat. You're not surprised. Meals reflect status through ingredients, quantity, seasoning, and serving vessels. Nobles may receive white bread made from finely sifted flour, while lower members of the household eat darker loaves containing rye, barley, bran, or mixed grains. In 1316, even coarse bread is valuable. A loaf is set nearby. Several people share it. One man cuts measured pieces with his knife. Watching the size of each portion, nobody complains. Hunger has made everyone an expert in fairness, especially when fairness benefits them. Historians still question how strictly seating rules were enforced during ordinary castle meals. Household ordinances describe careful hierarchies, but daily practice may have been more flexible. Crowding, travel, illness, and local custom could disrupt the neat arrangements preserved in written records. The ideal order survives more clearly than the messy reality. A musician sits near one wall, turning the pegs of a small stringed instrument. He does not perform yet. His fingers move quietly as he tests each note against the noise of the room. Entertainment may follow supper, provided the household has enough light and patience. Candles are expensive. Most illumination comes from the hearth, rushlights, and small lamps. A rushlight is made by peeling a rush and soaking its pith in fat. It burns quickly, smells unpleasant, and requires frequent attention. One curious household task involves carefully preparing bundles of these humble lights. Since darkness arrives early and refuses negotiation, the flame is tiny, its usefulness is not. A servant passes behind you carrying a basket of bread. His hands are red from cold water, and a crack near his thumb has begun to bleed slightly. He hides it against the basket. Service must continue, even when the body objects. You notice how quickly he moves. The hall's apparent abundance depends upon people working beyond the edges of attention. Cooks stand near ovens, scullions scrub pots, porters manage doors, brewers watch barrels, grooms tend horses, laundresses handle damp linen. The noble meal shines only because labour remains mostly unseen, except tonight. You begin to see it. A child at the high table drops a spoon. The sound rings sharply against the floor. A nurse retrieves it and wipes it with a cloth before returning it. The child looks bored, warm, and sleepy. Nearby, another child belonging to a servant carries cups nearly as large as his own head. Childhood follows rank too. Dogs move beneath the tables, searching for scraps. One waits with remarkable patience beside a knight, while another attempts to steal a crust from an inattentive clerk. The clerk notices at the last moment and lifts the bread away. The dog looks offended. Perhaps it has studied feudal privilege. Conversation grows louder as cups are refilled. You hear talk of blocked roads, missing carts, weak sheep, and grain prices. Someone claims a merchant is hiding sacks in a town warehouse. Another insists wolves have come closer to the village than usual. Rumour moves faster than any rider. Not every story is true. Every story reveals fear. At the high table, the Lord listens while a steward speaks near his shoulder. His expression remains calm, but his fingers tap once against the board. The gesture is small enough to miss. You see it only because you're watching. The household watches too. A castle lord must appear in control even when weather, harvest failure, debt, and disease resist command. His table must still suggest order. His servants must still move. His guests must still believe that the walls contain enough food. Fuel and discipline to survive. Appearance becomes another ration. The fire settles lower. A servant adds wood, and sparks climb into the smoky air. Their brief orange light catches faces across the hall. For an instant, noble, guard, child, clerk, and servant all seem equally tired. Then the shadows return. You finish the last of your pottage. The bowl is nearly clean, and you scrape it without embarrassment. Around you, the great hall continues its restless evening rhythm. Cups pass, benches creak, dogs circle, and whispered calculations hide beneath ordinary conversation. Warmth gathers near the flames. Cold waits along the walls. The fire in the great hall gives a sudden crack. A knot inside one log bursts, sending a brief spray of sparks toward the rafters. Several heads turn, then return to their bowls, cups, and quiet conversations. The moment passes quickly, but the smell of scorched wood grows sharper. You remain seated near the hearth. Warmth brushes your face, yet your feet still feel chilled beneath the table. A draught slips under the benches and winds around your boots. The air above is smoky and hot, while the floor remains damp and cold. Medieval heating often works like this, offering comfort in layers rather than throughout an entire room. You hold your hands nearer the flames. The skin across your knuckles begins to sting as feeling returns. Wool gloves have kept out some cold, but not all of it. Moisture from the courtyard remains trapped in the seams, even beside the fire. Your clothing carries winter with it. A servant adds another piece of wood. The log hisses before catching. Steam rises from its bark and thick smoke rolls outward. Someone coughs nearby. Another person waves a sleeve before her face, though the gesture changes very little. Dry fuel is scarce. Firewood is one of the castle's most important winter resources. It heats rooms, cooks meals, dries clothing, bakes bread, and supports metalwork. Woodlands may be carefully managed through coppicing, pruning, and controlled cutting. A large household can consume astonishing amounts during a long cold season. Each flame has a cost. The walls around you appear powerful from outside, but stone holds cold extremely well. During winter, it absorbs chill from the air and returns it slowly into the room. Thick walls provide defense, yet they do not create warmth. A person leaning against one may feel the cold through several layers of cloth. You test this quietly. Your fingertips touch the wall beside the bench. The surface is rough, slightly damp, and almost painfully cold. Moisture gathers in tiny hollows between stones. The mortar smells earthy, as though the castle itself has been dug from the frozen ground. It feels alive in a stubborn way. Tapestries hang along parts of the hall, softening both the appearance and the temperature. They block some drafts and reduce the bare chill of the stone. Wealthy households use woven hangings for decoration, insulation, and display. Bright hunting scenes can make a room seem warmer even when everyone inside still shivers. The colours are faded tonight. Smoke has darkened the upper edges. Dust clings to the threads, and one corner curls away from the wall. A servant will probably beat or brush it when weather permits. though such tasks become less urgent when food and fuel are uncertain. Practicality keeps winning. You watch two attendants carry a small brazier toward the high table. The metal bowl glows faintly with charcoal. It gives concentrated warmth, especially to hands and feet, but it also produces fumes in enclosed rooms. Poor ventilation can bring headaches, dizziness, or worse. People know smoke is unpleasant. They do not fully understand every danger. The evidence is incomplete regarding how often medieval households recognize charcoal fumes as a specific threat. Some records show awareness of suffocating air and dangerous enclosed fires, yet surviving explanations vary. Experience teaches caution, even when the science remains hidden. A noble woman extends one slippered foot toward the brazier. Her gown is lined with fur, probably squirrel, lamb, or another warm material suited to her rank. Fur helps, but it does not defeat the cold entirely. Her shoulders remain wrapped in a mantle, and she keeps her hands tucked beneath the fabric between bites. Luxury is relative. At a lower table, a servant wears several patched tunics layered together. One sleeve is longer than the other. A strip of cloth circles his neck where a better collar should be. Layering offers warmth. Though damp fabric can make the body colder when movement stops, he rarely stops moving. Servants carry bowls, gather cups, and clear scraps. Activity keeps their blood warm, but it also exposes them to doors, corridors, and courtyards. Each journey from fire to freezing air feels sharper than the last. You hear a door open behind you. Cold rushes across the hall in one clean wave. Candle flames bend. Smoke shifts direction. Several people pull their cloaks tighter without looking around. The person entering apologizes softly, but the draft has already travelled through the room. Doors are necessary enemies. Many chambers use shutters, curtains, and screens to limit cold air. Wooden partitions can divide large spaces, creating smaller areas that are easier to heat. Beds may have curtains for the same reason, trapping body warmth through the night. One lesser-known trick involves warming clothing near a hearth before dressing. A shirt or tunic placed too close might scorch, but the temptation is understandable. Few experiences feel crueler than pulling icy linen over sleepy skin before dawn. You imagine that first touch. It is enough to make you grateful for your cloak. The great hall fire begins to sink again. Despite the newly added wood, flames narrow around the logs, glowing red at their base. A servant uses an iron poker to shift the embers, releasing another cloud of sparks. The room smells stronger now. Smoke settles into hair, cloth, food, and bedding. It may repel some insects, though it irritates lungs and eyes. People living in such spaces grow accustomed to the smell, but complete comfort is unlikely. The human body adapts remarkably well, usually because it has no alternative. Near the hearth stands a wooden screen. It shields part of the room from direct drafts and may reflect some heat toward those seated nearby. Screens like these are simple but useful. They can also create small pockets of privacy in crowded halls. A sleepy child curls behind one. The child's nurse wraps him in a wool blanket and rests his head against a folded cloak. He is close enough to the fire for warmth, but not so close that sparks can reach him easily. The nurse checks the blanket twice before looking away. Fire demands watching. Castle fires are a constant risk because interiors contain timber, straw, cloth, oil, rushes, and dry furnishings. Hearths may be open, chimneys imperfect, and candles unstable. A single careless ember can spread quickly through roof beams or stored bedding. Stone walls do not guarantee safety. Roofs and floors may still burn. An odd detail appears in some household practices. People sometimes carried small hand warmers containing heated material. These could be metal, ceramic, or improvised containers wrapped for safety. The warmth faded quickly, but even a short relief mattered during prayer. travel, or long hours of sitting. You can understand the appeal. Your own fingers have only just stopped aching. The hall begins to empty slowly. Those with duties depart first, carrying lamps into colder passages. Others remain near the fire, reluctant to exchange shared warmth for private chambers. Sleeping rooms may seem more dignified, but dignity does not always come with heat. A guard lingers beside the doorway. His cloak is dusted with melting snow. He rubs his hands together while speaking to a kitchen servant. Both glance toward the remaining woodpile, then toward the steward. No one needs to explain. The pile is smaller than it should be. Wood deliveries have been delayed, and nearby tenants may already have cut what they need for themselves. Wet roads, snow, and weakened animals make hauling difficult. Even when trees are available, labour is required to fell, split, stack, season, and transport them. The castle cannot simply burn the forest overnight. Management matters. A household official may decide which rooms receive fires and which remain cold. The Lord's chamber, kitchen, nursery, infirmary, and guard stations compete for priority. Lesser rooms may go without heat entirely. People sleep in clothing, share beds, or crowd together. Privacy becomes expensive. You rise from the bench. The air feels colder the instant you move away from the hearth. Your back, which faced the room, has never truly warmed. The difference between one side of your body and the other is almost comical. Almost. You follow the flow of people toward the edge of the hall. Along the wall, droplets gather beneath a shuttered window. Frost outlines the wooden frame. Someone has stuffed cloth into a gap. But a thin current of air still escapes. You place your hand near it. The draught is steady and sharp. Outside, the wind presses against towers and roofs. Inside, servants feed fires that can never fully conquer the stone. The household survives not by defeating winter, but by creating small islands of warmth within it. A brazier glows, a curtain closes, a blanket is shared. The flames behind you settle lower, and the hall darkens by degrees. Smoke hangs beneath the rafters like a second ceiling. Beyond the doorway, the corridors wait in silence, colder than the room you are leaving. You draw your cloak around you. The castle shelters you from the storm. It does not let you forget it. The castle does not wake all at once. Long before the first pale light touches the snow, a servant moves through the corridor carrying a covered lamp. The flame trembles behind thin horn, turning the walls amber for a moment before darkness closes again. You hear soft footsteps, a cough quickly suppressed, and the faint rattle of keys. Then someone knocks at your door. It is not a noble summons. It is simply morning arriving early, as it always does for those who keep a great household alive. You rise beneath a wool blanket that has trapped some warmth through the night. The air beyond it feels sharp against your face. Your breath appears immediately. The chamber smells of a cold stone, old smoke, damp fabric, and the faint sweetness of dried herbs tucked near the bed. The fire has gone out. Only grey ash remains in the small hearth, along with one blackened piece of wood too stubborn to burn properly. You dress quickly. Your shirt feels icy at first, though the shock fades as you pull on heavier layers. Wool scratches at your wrists. Leather stiffens around your feet. Somewhere farther along the passage, a child begins to cry, then quiets when a nurse murmurs nearby. The castle is stirring. You follow the servant into the corridor. The floorboards creak beneath each step. Drafts slip under doors and through narrow openings, carrying the smell of kitchens, stubbles, rushes, and smoke. Few lamps burn because fuel for lighting is precious. Most people move by memory. A household this large depends on routine. Before the Lord wakes, fires must be revived, water fetched, floors swept, chambers aired, animals fed, and food prepared. Servants work in a sequence shaped by rank and urgency. One task begins only because another has already been completed. Nothing happens by magic. That may disappoint anyone who imagined castles run entirely on banners, trumpets, and dramatic entrances, and dramatic. You descend a narrow stair toward the lower hall. The stone steps are worn in the middle and cold beneath your boots. At the bottom, 2 young servants kneel beside a hearth, blowing carefully into yesterday's embers. A spark glows. One places dry tinder over it, then thin splinters, then slightly larger pieces of wood. The work requires patience. Too much fuel smothers the heat. Too little leaves the flame weak. Successful fire begins with attention rather than strength. The first flame appears. It curls beneath the shavings, small and blue at the base. Smoke rises into the dim room. Everyone watches until the flame catches, because the household's morning depends upon it. Keeping embers alive overnight saves time and fuel. In some homes, ash is banked around glowing coal so they remain warm until dawn. Relighting a completely dead fire is possible, but less convenient. Flint, steel, tinder, and practiced hands become essential. You warm your fingers briefly. The servant beside you does not. She is already carrying a basket toward another chamber, where another fire must be coaxed awake. Comfort belongs to those who can pause. You continue toward the yard. The outer door opens with a groan, and cold air rushes inside. Snow lies pale beneath the last darkness. The sky is beginning to lighten behind the walls. But morning has not yet reached the courtyard. A water carrier waits beside 2 wooden buckets. The well stands near the centre of the yard, protected by a low roof. Ice rims the stones around it. A rope creaks over the wheel as the bucket descends into blackness. You hear the splash below. Water is needed everywhere. Kitchens require it for cooking and washing. Animals need it for drinking. Chambers need basins. Brewers, laundresses, healers, and craftsmen all depend upon a steady supply. Each bucket is heavy. When the rope rises again, droplets freeze along its fibres. The carrier tips the water into waiting vessels and immediately lowers the bucket once more. His hands are wrapped in cloth, yet his fingers move stiffly. You lift one pail. The wooden handle presses through your glove. Water shifts against the sides, pulling your arm downward. A short walk across the courtyard becomes slow work when ice lies beneath every step. Cold bites your cheeks. Near the kitchen entrance, several servants form a chain. Water passes from hand to hand, along with split wood and baskets of vegetables. The system reduces wasted movement and keeps the doorway from becoming crowded. Inside, the kitchens roar with activity. The warmth is sudden and almost overwhelming. Ovens glow, pots hang over fires. Steam clouds the air, carrying the scents of onions, oats, ale, grease, and wet timber. A cook stirs a large cauldron while shouting instructions without turning around. Breakfast will be simple. Pottage must be warmed, bread cut, and ale distributed. The household does not begin with sugared pastries and shining silver dishes. Most people need something hot, filling, and quick before work resumes. A scullion scrapes yesterday's pot. The iron surface is blackened and greasy. Ash and sand can help remove stubborn residue. Water alone is too valuable and often too cold for generous washing. Cleanliness exists here. Though it follows different methods and expectations, peculiar kitchen practice involves using stale bread as a thickener, a serving base, or an ingredient in sauces. Nothing edible should be wasted when grain is scarce. Even crumbs may be gathered for another dish. The cook notices everything. A servant who slices bread too thickly receives a sharp glance. Another who spills grain must collect each visible piece. Hunger has transformed ordinary care into discipline. You leave the kitchens and enter the lower hall. 2 workers lift old rushes from the floor using wooden rakes. Dust rises around them, mixed with cut crumbs. dried mud, and whatever small debris yesterday left behind. The smell is stale and earthy. Fresh rushes are not replaced daily. That familiar image of fragrant herbs scattered constantly across spotless floors belongs more to idealized storytelling than ordinary practice. Rushes may remain for some time, especially during winter. They are turned, supplemented, or removed according to supply and household standards. The surviving records offer no single pattern. Large wealthy residences may manage floors more regularly, while smaller households use whatever labour and materials remain available. Season, weather, local plants, and the demands of the day all shape the result. You help gather the worst of the debris. The rake catches beneath a bench. A lost button appears, followed by a bone, a strip of leather, and a small wooden toy shaped like a horse. The servant beside you pockets the toy, probably intending to return it to a child later. Tiny objects survive busy rooms, so do tiny kindnesses. Near the doorway, a maid shakes out a linen cloth. Fine dust glitters in the lamplight. She folds it carefully, checking for stains and tears. Linen is costly in labour, requiring flax cultivation, processing, spinning, weaving, bleaching, and sewing. Nothing is casually discarded. Elsewhere, chamber servants empty basins, collect clothing, and prepare wash water. Laundry during winter is exhausting. Fabric must be soaked, scrubbed, beaten, rinsed, carried, and somehow dried in cold, damp air. Hands suffer quickly. Cracked skin, swollen joints, and numb fingers become ordinary complaints. Grease, herbal salves, and cloth wrappings may offer relief. Whether particular remedies work depends greatly on what they contain and how severe the injury has become. You pass a laundry worker wringing a cloth. Steam rises from the basin, but the room itself remains cold. Her sleeves are rolled above red forearms. She twists the linen with practiced strength, then hangs it near a fire where dozens of other pieces already compete for space. Smoke will cling to them. Perfect freshness must wait for spring. A bell sounds from the chapel, its note travels softly through the castle, summoning some members of the household to prayer and reminding others of the hour. Work does not stop everywhere. A cook cannot abandon boiling grain. A groom cannot leave a restless horse. Devotion must sometimes fit around necessity. The sky beyond the windows grows pale. Guards return from the walls with snow on their shoulders. Night servants hand duties to morning workers. The exchange happens quietly, with brief reports about the weather, the gate, and any movement beyond the walls. Nothing unusual occurred. That is welcome news. You stand near the hall entrance as the household gathers momentum. Fires brighten, doors open, buckets move, bread is counted, floors are cleared, somewhere above. The noble family begins to wake into rooms already prepared by unseen hands. The castle now appears ready for another day. Only you know how many cold fingers, bent backs, careful steps, and half-heard instructions created that illusion. Outside, dawn spreads over the frozen yard. Inside, labour has beaten it there. Breakfast ends, but the kitchens do not become quiet. Bowls are gathered, crumbs collected, and cups carried toward the washing area. The morning meal has only opened the day. Before noon, cooks must decide how to feed the household again, using stores that shrink faster than anyone admits aloud. You remain near the kitchen passage. Warm air moves around you in waves, scented with boiled grain, smoke, onions, sour ale, and salted fat. The floor feels greasy beneath your boots. Somewhere behind a screen, a knife strikes a chopping board with a slow, patient rhythm. A clerk enters carrying a wax tablet. He speaks briefly with the chief cook, then studies several baskets near the wall. One holds onions softened by frost. Another contains dried peas and beans. A third is nearly empty, with only a scattering of oats left beneath a folded cloth. The clerk makes a mark. Household accounts often record grain. livestock, fish, wine, ale, spices, candles, and other supplies. These records help officials plan meals, monitor waste, and prove that resources have been used properly. In a difficult winter, every entry becomes more serious. Numbers can sound peaceful, their meaning may not be. You follow the cook into a storeroom beyond the main kitchen. The room is cooler, with thick walls and a heavy door. Shelves hold crocks, sacks, baskets, and wooden containers. Hooks support pieces of smoked meat, though fewer remain than the empty hooks suggest. The smell is dense and layered. Salt, grain dust, dried herbs, cheese rind, old wood, and smoke mingle in the still air. A faint trace of mould hangs near one corner. The cook notices it at once and pulls a sack away from the damp wall. Moisture ruins food quietly. Grain must be kept dry and protected from insects, mice, rats, and mould. Poor storage can destroy supplies even when harvests have been adequate. During the famine years, preserving what remains is almost as important as obtaining more. The cook opens one sack. He pushes a hand into the grain, lifts a small amount, and lets it run between his fingers. The kernels fall with a soft, dry whisper. He checks for dampness, strange smells, droppings, or movement. You lean closer. The grain looks usable, but mixed. Wheat is scarce, so barley, rye, oats, and peas may be combined. Bread made from such mixtures is darker, heavier, and sometimes difficult to digest. Still, it fills the stomach. That is enough. White bread carries status because producing it requires finely sifted flour. The lower tables usually receive coarser loaves containing more bran and mixed grains. In 1316, even the noble household may accept darker bread than custom normally allows. Scarcity rearranges pride. A baker's assistant arrives with news from the oven. Yesterday's flour will produce fewer loaves than expected because the dough has risen poorly. Cold temperatures slow fermentation, and weak flour creates disappointing bread. The cook closes his eyes briefly. No one speaks. The assistant adds that several loaves can be made smaller. That solution preserves the appearance of abundance, though each person receives less. A loaf can look complete while hiding a reduced ration. Presentation matters at noble tables. Hunger notices weight. You walk toward the bakehouse, where heat gathers under a low ceiling. The oven has been fired and cleared, leaving hot bricks ready for dough. A baker presses his hand near the opening, judging temperature without any instrument. Experience guides him. Bundles of brushwood and split logs heat the oven before baking. Once the fuel burns down, ashen embers are removed. Bread is then placed on the heated surface and the stored warmth cooks it slowly. The method is efficient, but demanding. Too much heat burns the crust while leaving the middle heavy. Too little produces pale, dense loaves. Fuel quality, weather, flour, yeast, and timing all influence the result. Today, nothing is dependable. A row of dough rests beneath cloths. Some loaves are round, while others are flatter and smaller. The baker lifts one covering and presses a finger lightly into the surface. The dough barely responds. He mutters that the cold has made it lazy. One curious remedy is to keep dough near warm walls, hearths, or even beneath bedding to encourage rising. The practice sounds strange only until you remember that reliable indoor temperatures do not exist. Warmth is used wherever it can be found. No one wastes a useful blanket. The baker shapes another loaf while you watch. His hands move quickly, folding and turning the dough. Flour dust settles across his sleeves and hair, making him look older beneath the lamplight. A small boy sweeps fallen flour from the table. He does not throw it away. The dust contains crumbs, grain, and perhaps a little ash, but portions may still be sifted or used for lesser food. The line between waste and ingredient becomes narrow during hunger. Back in the kitchen, the midday pottage is beginning. A cauldron hangs above the fire, filled with water, grain, peas, and onions. Pottage is not one fixed recipe, it changes according to season. Wealth, region, and available ingredients. It may be thin or thick, plain or rich, served daily to both poor and wealthy households. The difference lies inside the pot, at the high table. Pottage might receive meat broth, eggs, saffron, pepper, or other costly additions. Lower servants may eat a simpler mixture based on grain and vegetables in hard times. One large pot can be adjusted at the last moment, with better portions reserved for those of higher rank. You watch the cook divide a piece of salted pork. Most goes into a smaller vessel intended for the upper table. The main cauldron receives only the rind, a little fat, and several bones. Even these will add flavour. Nothing useful is ignored. Salted meat is valuable because winter limits fresh supply. Animals are often slaughtered in autumn when fodder becomes scarce, then preserved through salting, smoking, or drying by late winter. Remaining pieces may be hard, intensely salty, or spoiled around the edges. The cook trims one carefully. The knife reveals darker meat beneath the surface. He smells it, presses it, and decides it can be used. Medieval cooks rely heavily upon sight, touch, and scent when judging food. The nose serves as a quiet guardian. Questions remain about how much spoiled or poor quality food famine-stricken households consumed before rejecting it. Written accounts rarely describe every ordinary meal, especially among servants. Archaeological evidence offers clues but not complete menus. Survival leaves uneven records. A kitchen maid pours ale into the cauldron. The liquid loosens the mixture and adds flavour. Weak ale is commonly brewed within large households, providing calories as well as drink. Brewing creates another useful product. Spent grain can feed animals or appear in coarse food. Yeast and sediment may support baking. In a well-managed household, one process supplies another, and very little remains entirely useless. A sudden scratching comes from behind a chest. Everyone pauses. The sound returns, followed by a quick movement near the wall. A small rat disappears into a gap before a boy can strike it with a broom. The cook responds with surprising calm. Rats and mice threaten grain stores, but castles use traps, cats, dogs, sealed containers, and regular inspection against them. Complete control is unlikely. Thick walls contain countless cracks, and food attracts determined visitors. The boy places a trap beside the chest. Its bait is painfully small. You leave the storeroom as servants begin carrying bread into the hall. Each loaf has been counted. Some are marked or shaped differently to indicate quality and destination. The finest go upward. The darker loaves remain below. Outside the kitchen, 2 labourers wait for their portions. They have spent the morning hauling wood and clearing snow. Their faces are red from wind, and their gloves are wet. One stares at the bread basket longer than politeness permits. He receives a piece. It is smaller than yesterday's. No announcement explains the change. None is needed. The men look at each other, then move aside. The household is rationing carefully now. You hear the steward speaking near the passage. Grain expected from an outlying manor has not arrived. The cart may be delayed by snow, weakened oxen, a damaged bridge, or tenants unable to spare what is owed. Each explanation is possible. None produces bread. The cook stirs the cauldron once more. Steam rises and touches your face. The smell is comforting, but thin, onion, grain, smoke, and a trace of pork offer the promise of fullness without quite guaranteeing it. Bowls are placed in rows. Servants wait for the signal. Around you, the kitchen works with discipline, habit, and quiet invention. Water stretches broth, bones lend flavour. Stale bread thickens sauce. Grain is mixed, crumbs recovered, and smaller loaves made to look complete. The castle still eats. For the moment, that is victory. The midday meal reaches the high table beneath a careful silence. You stand near the edge of the hall as servants carry bowls toward the raised platform. Steam rises from the pottage, softening the faces behind it. The Lord watches each dish arrive without appearing to count. You suspect he counts everything. His household must look secure, especially now. A noble family survives partly through land, rents, harvests, marriage ties, military service, and reputation. When food grows scarce, reputation becomes another storehouse to protect. It cannot be allowed to look empty. The Lord sits beneath a hanging embroidered with faded hunting scenes. He wears a heavy wool gown lined with fur, though one hand remains curled around a warm cup. Beside him sits his wife, composed and alert, her expression pleasant enough for public view. Across the hall, people watch them. Dependents study noble faces for signs of danger. A worried steward might mean reduced rations. A quiet lord may signal bad news from an estate. A lady suddenly dismissing musicians can suggest economy, mourning, illness, or a household dispute. Every gesture becomes a message. You're shown to a place where visitors and lesser officials may wait. From here, you can see the steward approach the high table carrying a folded account. He bows, then speaks near the Lord's shoulder. The Lord listens without turning. A shipment of grain has failed to arrive. Several tenants claim their stores are exhausted. 2 cart horses have become too weak for another journey. A mill downstream may have stopped because ice has blocked the wheel. The report is given quietly. Its consequences fill the room. The Lord's fingers tap once against the table, just as they did during supper. His wife notices, though she continues speaking to a young relative beside her. Calmness is not merely good manners, it is part of their duty. A noble household must display order during uncertainty. The Lord owes protection, justice, and leadership to those beneath his authority, at least in principle. In return, tenants owe rents, labour, goods, or service according to local custom. The arrangement is unequal, but it carries obligations in both directions. Winter strains those obligations. A tenant cannot deliver grain that never grew. A lord cannot feed every hungry person indefinitely. Mercy may preserve loyalty, yet excessive generosity can empty the castle stores. Harsh demands may secure food today and destroy the estate tomorrow. There is no painless choice. You follow the steward into a smaller chamber after the meal. The room lies behind the high table and feels more private, though servants still move through it regularly. A fire burns in a wall hearth. Wax tablets, parchment rolls, seals, and writing tools cover a long table. The air smells of smoke, wax, ink, and damp wool. Here the household's troubles become columns and marks. A clerk reads figures aloud, grain remaining in one granary, salted fish held in storage, ale expected from the brew house, hay reserved for horses, candles used during the previous week. The Lord asks short questions, the steward answers carefully. Estate management is serious work. Large medieval households depend upon reeves, bailiffs, stewards, clerks, and other officials who oversee land, labour, rents, purchases, and supplies. The noble family may set priorities, but daily survival rests upon many trained hands. Power requires paperwork. This fact is less dramatic than a siege, but far more common. The lady of the castle joins the discussion. She asks about linen, medicinal herbs, chamber fuel, and the children's food. Her concerns differ from the steward's, yet they are not minor. Clothing, care, hospitality, and domestic discipline all affect the household's stability. She also asks about the village poor. The room grows still. A small amount of grain has been distributed near the gate on certain days. More people now gather there. Some are tenants. Others have arrived from farther away, carrying children, tools, or nothing at all. The steward advises reducing the allowance. The chaplain advises compassion. The Lord looks toward the fire. You sense how rank can become its own prison. Everyone expects him to decide, while nobody can promise which choice is correct. Give too little, and people may starve or flee. Give too much, and the castle itself may fail before spring. His wife proposes thinner bread and fixed distribution days. It is neither generous nor cruel. It is possible. The surviving evidence does not reveal how consistently noble women shape such decisions behind closed doors. Formal records often foreground male officials, while letters, accounts, and household instructions suggest women could exercise substantial practical authority. Much depended upon personality, absence, widowhood, family structure, and local custom. The lady before you speaks with confidence, no one interrupts her. A young boy enters carrying a message. He bows too quickly, nearly loses his footing, and recovers with a frightened expression. The lord takes the folded note and breaks its wax seal. A neighbouring manor requests assistance. Its roof has collapsed over one storage building, and several cattle have died. The writer asks for grain, timber, and permission to use the castle mill once the ice clears. The steward exhales softly, requests travel easily, supplies do not. The lord dictates a reply offering timber but no grain. He permits mill access if transport becomes possible. The answer protects a useful alliance without promising what the castle may not have. Politics continues during famine. Perhaps it becomes sharper. You notice a small painted box near the lady's chair. Inside are several pieces used for a table game, possibly chess or tables, an ancestor of backgammon. Noble families may play such games during long indoor hours, enjoying strategy, conversation, and competition. One unusually revealing habit appears in moral writings, where clerics complain that gaming can lead to quarrels, wasted time, and reckless betting, apparently. Even a freezing castle with dwindling bread can still produce arguments over a board game. Human priorities remain wonderfully durable. The lord's younger brother enters wearing riding boots stained with frozen mud. He has returned from inspecting nearby lands. His report is worse than expected. Several fields remain waterlogged beneath the snow. Fences are broken, villagers have cut branches from managed woodland without permission. Someone has slaughtered a breeding animal rather than watch it weaken. The steward calls it theft. The younger brother calls it desperation. The distinction matters, so does who has authority to define it. The lord asks whether the woodcutters were identified. His brother names two families and adds that both have small children. A fine would be lawful, confiscation might also be lawful. The lady looks at her husband. He orders a warning and temporary labour service instead. The steward does not object, though his mouth tightens slightly. Mercy creates work for officials because exceptions must be remembered, explained, and prevented from becoming expectations. Still, the decision stands. You begin to see how the noble household performs two lives at once. In the hall, it displays confidence, warmth, and measured abundance. In private, it bargains with shortages, damaged roofs, weak horses, frightened tenants, and rival claims upon every sack. Appearance protects authority. Secrecy protects appearance. Later, you pass through the family's private chamber. A carved chest stands near the bed, and painted cloth covers as part of the wall. The room is finer than those below, yet the cold remains present. A servant warms the bed with heated stones wrapped in cloth. Another mends a fur lining at the window. A nurse divides dried fruit between two children. Counting each piece, a privilege has not vanished. It has narrowed. The children speak about a feast expected later in the season. One asks whether musicians will come. The nurse says that depends upon the roads. Nobody mentions that it also depends upon food, candles, payment, and the lord's desire to appear prosperous. You hear footsteps in the corridor. A visitor has arrived from another estate, bringing greetings and perhaps another request. The family must receive him graciously. Cups will be filled, bread will be offered. The fire may be fed more generously for an hour. Hospitality is expensive, refusing it may cost more. The lord returns to the hall with his shoulders straight and his expression settled. His wife walks beside him. Servants move ahead to prepare their seats, adjust the table, and brighten the room. From below, they look secure. You now know better. Their authority rests upon stone walls, inherited land, disciplined servants, loyal officials, stored grain, and the belief that tomorrow can still be managed. Outside, snow gathers against the windows. Inside, the noble household continues counting without seeming to count at all. By afternoon, the wind has strengthened above the walls. You climb toward the battlements behind a guard carrying a hooded lantern. The stair turns tightly within the tower, forcing you to place each foot carefully. Moisture shines on the stone steps, and the handrail feels smooth from generations of cold fingers. The air sharpens as you rise. At the top, a wooden door opens against the pressure of the wind. Snow blows through this gap in a fine white cloud. The guard lowers his shoulder, pushes harder, and leads you onto the wall walk. Cold strikes without ceremony. It presses through your cloak, bites the skin beneath your hood, and finds the narrow space between glove and sleeve. Your eyes water. Breath catches in your throat before leaving as pale mist. The battlements stretch ahead, edged with frost. Beyond them, the countryside appears almost empty. Fields, tracks, cottages, and hedges merge beneath snow. The village rues are soft white shapes below, while distant woodland forms a dark line beneath the grey sky. Nothing seems to move. That does not mean nobody is watching. A castle garrison keeps guard during winter just as it does during summer. The threat of a formal siege may be low, but raiders, thieves, rival retainers, desperate travellers, and wandering soldiers remain possible concerns. Hunger can make ordinary boundaries feel negotiable. You follow the wall. A sentry stands between two merlins, wrapped in a cloak stiffened by ice. Cloth has been wound around his boots and lower legs. His spear rests against the parapet, while both hands remain tucked beneath his arms. He looks relieved to see the replacement guard. The exchange is brief. No movement near the eastern road. Two figures crossed a distant field at noon. Smoke from one village cottage has stopped. A dog barked near the outer ditch before dawn. Small observations matter here. The new sentry takes his position. The other man walks toward the tower, moving slowly because his feet have become numb. His shoulders are dusted with snow, and his beard carries tiny beads of ice. You hear his boots scrape the stone. Good footwear is essential, yet medieval soldiers do not possess magical boots designed for perfect winter comfort. Leather absorbs moisture. Soles wear thin, and repairs depend upon available materials. Extra socks, felt, straw, or cloth wrappings may provide insulation. Nothing remains dry for long. The guard beside you shows where snow is collected inside a drainage channel if the passage freezes completely. Melting water may pool and damage masonry or timber. Maintenance does not stop merely because everyone would prefer to remain beside the fire. A young soldier arrives with a wooden shovel. He begins clearing the channel, pushing snow towards an opening in the wall. Each movement sends powder swirling across the walkway. The shovel is split near one edge, but a strip of leather holds it together. Tools endure through repair, so do people. You lean carefully toward a narrow slit inside the tower. The opening is narrow on the outer face and wider within, allowing defenders room to aim while reducing exposure. Ice rims the stone. Through it, the road below appears as a thin, pale ribbon. A bow rests nearby. The string has been removed to protect it from dampness. Bowstrings made from animal fibers, linen, or hemp can lose strength when wet. Weapons require care, even when no enemy stands beneath the walls. The guard checks the bow stave. He runs his thumb along the wood, searching for cracks. Cold and moisture can damage equipment quietly. A weapon neglected through winter may fail precisely when spring brings renewed movement. Preparedness is repetitive work. In a corner of the tower, several crossbow bolts stand in a wooden rack. Their iron heads look dark and slightly greasy. Oil or animal fat may help limit rust, though supplies must be used sparingly. Metal hates damp air. The castle provides plenty of it. You continue toward the next tower, where a brazier glows behind a wooden screen. 3 guards crowd around it, holding their hands above the coals. The warmth barely reaches beyond their wrists, but nobody complains. One man offers you space. You extend your fingers toward the heat. Smoke from the charcoal has a bitter, dry smell. It clings to the back of your throat, mixing with wool, leather, and the faint sourness of bodies confined in heavy clothing. The men speak quietly. Their ration today included bread, ale, and pottage. One received a small strip of salted fish because he had worked through the previous night. Another claims the fish was so hard it could have reinforced the gate. The others laugh softly. Gentle mockery makes poor food easier to swallow. Soldiers attached to a castle might be permanent household retainers, hired men, local levies, or temporary forces, depending upon the place and circumstance, during an ordinary winter. The number stationed inside could be far smaller than popular imagination suggests. A castle does not always contain an army. Sometimes it contains a tired handful of men who know every loose stone. The surviving documents leave uncertainty about exact garrison strength at many lesser fortresses during famine years. Accounts may list wages without naming every duty, while later descriptions sometimes exaggerate military readiness. The impressive walls have endured more clearly than the daily staffing arrangements. Here, perhaps 24 men share the watches, perhaps fewer. A horn hangs from a peg beside the door. It can signal danger, announce movement, or summon assistance. The object is plain, polished by use, and bound with a leather strap. One guard lifts it. He does not blow. Instead, he explains that cold can stiffen the lips and make a clear signal difficult. A sentry may warm the mouthpiece under his cloak before sounding it. It's a tiny practical concern rarely celebrated in songs about heroic defense. Songs prefer trumpets. Winter prefers frozen spit. You leave the brazier and cross another exposed stretch. The wind has changed direction, driving snow directly into your face. The parapet offers little shelter until you crouch slightly. Your cheeks begin to ache. Below, movement appears near the village road. 2 figures pull a small sled toward the gate. One walks in front, leaning into a rope. The other pushes from behind. The sentry calls to the tower. Several guards gather at the wall, studying the travellers. From this distance, they appear unarmed, their pace is slow, and the sled carries a covered bundle. No one assumes safety. The gatehouse sends a man to the outer barrier. Questions will be asked before the travellers approach further. Are they tenants, messengers, traders, or strangers? Does the bundle contain goods? A sick person? Or something stolen? The walls make suspicion easier. They also make caution possible. You watch the figures stop below. Their voices rise faintly through the wind, though the words disappear before reaching you. One guard recognizes the taller traveller as a miller from a nearby holding. The bundle contains broken gear. A wooden axle has cracked, and the miller hopes the castle carpenter can repair it without the cart. Grain cannot be transported even if the mill begins turning again. The men on the wall relax slightly. A broken axle is ordinary trouble. This winter, ordinary trouble feels almost comforting. As daylight fades, the guards prepare for another watch. Lanterns are checked, cloaks are tightened. A small ration of ale is carried upward in a covered jug. The drink may warm the spirit, though too much would dull attention and worsen cold exposure. Discipline lives in moderation. One sentry rubs animal fat into a cracked leather strap. Another adjusts the cloth around his feet. A third breaks ice from the edge of a step with the butt of his spear. No gesture looks heroic. Together, they keep the fortress functioning. The bell below marks the changing hour. Its sound rises through the snow, deep and steady. Guards move between towers. Passing reports from one watch to the next, you stand once more at the parapet. Darkness spreads across the fields. Village smoke lies low beneath the clouds. The road disappears first, then the hedges, then the distant trees. Soon, the world beyond the walls becomes invisible. The sentries remain. They listen for hooves, voices, dogs cracking wood, and anything else the night might carry toward the gate. Their hands ache, their boots leak, their supper is thin. Still, they watch. Behind you, the tower door opens, releasing a narrow band of warmer light. You turn toward it gratefully, leaving the guards beneath the gathering snow. Their silhouettes fade against the battlements. The castle sleeps only because they do not. When you descend from the walls, the castle feels almost gentle. The wind no longer strikes your bow, and the corridor seems warm by comparison. Melted snow darkens your shoulders. Water slips from your cloak and taps softly against the stone floor. A maid notices the trail. She says nothing, though her expression suggests the floor has suffered enough today. With a cloth wrapped around one hand, she wipes the wet marks before someone important steps through them. Her work disappears as she performs it. You follow her toward the inner chambers, where the rhythm of the household changes. The noise is softer here, voices lower behind doors. Fabric brushes against wooden chests, and needles click faintly against metal thimbles. Women manage much of this quieter world. Their work reaches into clothing, food, medicine, childcare, hospitality, storage, prayer, and discipline. Some tasks belong to noble women, others fall to maids, laundresses, nurses, spinners, brewers, dairy workers, and servants whose names rarely enter formal records. The chamber ahead is bright with several lamps. A group of women sit near the fire, mending clothing. One repairs a torn sleeve, another reinforces the heel of a wool stocking. A third sorts lengths of thread by thickness. You smell beeswax, wool, smoke, and dried lavender. The noble lady sits near the window, examining a fur-lined mantle. Its clasp is broken, and the edges stained with melted snow. She discusses the repair with an older servant who appears to supervise the wardrobe. Clothing represents wealth. It also represents labour. Wool must be cleaned, combed, spun, woven, cut, sewn, dyed, and repaired. Linen requires even more preparation before it becomes a shirt, veil, cloth, or sheet. Good garments are altered, patched, relined, and passed between members of a household. Discarding them casually would be absurd. A young maid holds a tunic toward the fire. She is trying to dry the fabric without scorching it. The smoke reaches the cloth first, leaving a faint bitter smell. She turns it carefully and checks the seams for dampness. Winter laundry is never entirely finished. Some garments hang for days in rooms where fires are already overburdened. Others are pressed between dry cloths, or worn before fully dry. Comfort must negotiate with necessity. You move toward a work table. Needles, scissors, pins, scraps, and spools lie in careful order. Metal needles are valuable enough to guard closely. Losing one in bedding or rushes can waste money and produce a very unpleasant discovery later. A servant counts them before closing a small box. One is missing. The women stop working. They search the table, the floor, and the folds of cloth. Nobody panics, but nobody continues either. At last, a child finds the needle caught in a cuff. The room exhales. Such a tiny object commands remarkable authority. Near the hearth, a nurse rocks an infant wrapped in several layers. The baby makes a soft, restless sound, then settles against her chest. Another child sits nearby, sorting carved wooden pieces into a bowl. The nurse works without pause. She checks the infant's warmth, wipes its mouth, adjusts the blanket, and listens to a maid reporting that one of the older children has begun coughing. Her attention moves constantly. though her body remains almost still. Childcare is skilled labour. Noble infants may be breastfed by wet nurses, especially when family custom, health status, or circumstance encourages it. Yet arrangements vary widely, and surviving evidence rarely captures the emotional complexity of these relationships. The wet nurse may live close to the child for years. Attachment grows where records remain silent. The lady asks whether the coughing child has fever. The nurse says not yet. A warm drink will be prepared, and the child will sleep away from the draftiest wall. No one uses the word fear. It is present anyway. You continue into a smaller chamber where herbs hang from rafters. Bundles of sage, fennel, mint, rue, and other plants dry above shelves. Some are used in cooking, others appear in remedies, washes, poultices, or scented cloths. The room smells green despite the snow outside. A woman grinds dried leaves with a stone pestle. She mixes them with honey and warm ale, creating a soothing drink for the child. The remedy may ease the throat even if it does not address the cause. Medieval healing often blends observation, inherited tradition, religious belief, and classical medical theory. Women in households commonly preserve practical knowledge about births, fevers, wounds, digestion, and everyday discomforts. Not all of it is foolish. Not all of it is safe. One unusual household treatment involves placing scented herbs among stored clothes to discourage insects and improve the smell. Wormwood, lavender, tansy, or other plants might be used according to local availability. The method probably helps somewhat, though determined moths are not known for respecting noble rank. You return to the larger chamber. 2 maids are helping the lady change her gown. Privacy here does not mean solitude. Dressing requires assistance with layers, lacing, pins, belts, veils, and heavy outer garments. The lady raises her arms. One maid smooths the underdress. Another fastens the outer gown and arranges the fur at the collar. Their hands move quickly because the room is cold and the lady cannot remain uncovered for long. Rank brings help. It also brings witnesses. A dispute begins near the door. A laundress accuses a younger maid of returning linen with a new tear. The maid insists the cloth was already damaged. Their voices stay low, but the tension sharpens. An older housekeeper intervenes. She examines the tear, asks who handled the linen, and assigns the repair without deciding guilt. The choice prevents a longer argument and keeps the work moving. Order often looks practical rather than dramatic. Senior women may supervise servants. Keys, textiles, food stores, chamber access, and household conduct. Their authority can be substantial, especially within domestic spaces. Yet titles and duties differ between regions and estates. The records do not always show where formal command ended and personal influence began. Inside this room, the housekeeper is obeyed immediately. She checks a list of linen stored in a nearby chest. Sheets, towels, tablecloths, veils, and undergarments must be counted. Missing cloth can mean carelessness, theft, damage, or simple confusion. Each possibility matters. Textiles are among the household's most valuable movable goods. Chests remain locked, and keys are entrusted carefully. A noblewoman may control stores that represent years of work and considerable expense. The lady wears several keys at her belt. They make a soft sound when she walks. You follow that sound into another chamber, where food for the children is being prepared. A maid cuts an apple into thin pieces, removing a soft brown section. Dried fruit is added to a small bowl of bread and warm milk. The portion is modest. Children of rank receive better food than most villagers, but winter shortages still shape their meals. Rich spices and sweets may appear on special occasions, while ordinary days rely upon grain, dairy, eggs, fruit, and whatever meat the household can spare. One child asks for more honey. The maid looks toward the nurse. The answer is no. Honey serves as food. Sweetener, medicine, and preservative. It is too useful to satisfy every request. The child frowns, then eats without further protest. Small discipline begins early. As evening approaches, the women prepare the chambers for night. Curtains are drawn, bedding is checked, clothing is laid near warmth, lamps are trimmed, and chamber pots are placed where sleepy feet can find them. A maid tucks cloth into a window gap. Another shakes out a blanket and finds a flea. She catches it between damp fingers with grim satisfaction. The victory is tiny. It still earns a smile. You pause at the doorway while the room settles. The lady reads a short prayer. The nurse hums to the infant. Needles return to their box, herbs to their shelf, and keys to the belt govern so much of indoor life. Outside, men guard the walls. Inside, women guard continuity. They mend what tears, calm what creases, count what dwindles, warm what chills, and settle disputes before they spread. Their work rarely announces itself with bells or banners. The household would unravel without it. You leave as the final curtain closes around the children's bed. The fire glows low. Soft voices fade behind you. In the corridor, the castle feels orderly again. That order has been stitched together by the hand. The child's cough follows you into the corridor. It is not loud, yet the sound carries through the quiet passage with unsettling clarity. A nurse closes the chamber door, softening it to a murmur. Nearby, another child chases a wooden hoop until a maid catches his shoulder and reminds him that noble floors are not village lanes. He looks unconvinced. Morning lessons have ended, and the younger residents now occupy the uneasy space between duty and supper. Some belong to the Lord's family, others are pages, fostered relatives, servant children, or the sons and daughters of household officers. They share walls, but not childhoods. You enter a small chamber where 3 older children sit around a table. Wax tablets lie before them, marked with letters and simple Latin phrases. A clerk points to one line while a boy repeats the words carefully. His pronunciation earns a sigh. Education within noble households varies greatly. Boys destined for clerical or administrative work may study reading, writing, Latin, law, or account keeping. Girls of rank can learn reading, household management, music, religion, sewing, and estate responsibilities. Learning depends upon family ambition. It also depends upon available teachers. A girl near the window copies a prayer onto her tablet. Her fingers are stiff from cold, so the stylus scratches unevenly through the wax. She pauses to warm her hands beneath her arms. The clerk pretends not to notice. You stand beside the hearth, where a small flame struggles around damp wood. The chamber smells of wax, wool, smoke, and the sweet residue of yesterday's honeyed drink. Frost clouds the lower corners of the shuttered window. The children keep their cloaks on. A younger boy traces letters with one finger, then glances toward a carved horse hidden beneath the table. The toy has only 3 legs now. Its missing limb does not appear to trouble him. Play repairs what reality removes. Children in castles use dolls, balls, hoops, whistles, tops, knucklebones, miniature animals, and improvise games. Expensive toys may be carved, painted, or dressed in cloth. Simpler objects emerge from scraps of wood, bone, leather, and imagination. The clerk turns suddenly. The horse disappears into the boy's sleeve. Lessons continue. You hear a muffled laugh from the girl near the window. The clerk raises one eyebrow, though his own mouth briefly softens. Discipline matters, but even tired adults remember what boredom feels like. Outside the chamber, 2 servant children carry folded linen. The older one is perhaps 9 years old. She balances the bundle against her hip and guides her smaller brother with her free hand. Their work is real, though adjusted to their size. Child labour is ordinary here. Young people learn through participation long before reaching adulthood. They fetch, carry, sweep, watch animals, help in kitchens, run messages, and assist skilled workers. Their tasks can be tiring, but they also form part of training and household belonging. The line between learning and labour remains thin. You follow the pair toward the laundry room. The boy drops one cloth, retrieves it quickly, and presses it against the bundle before anyone sees. His sister notices. She gives him a look worthy of the steward. No words are necessary. In the courtyard, several pages practice with wooden swords. Their instructor has chosen a sheltered corner, though snow still blows beneath the covered walkway. The boys wear padded clothing and move awkwardly on frozen ground. One loses his footing. He lands in slush, rises immediately, and insists he is unhurt. The others laugh until the instructor orders them back into position. Training does not pause for embarrassment. Pages in noble households may begin learning riding, manners, service, hunting, weapons, and courtly behaviour while still young. Such training prepares some for knighthood, though not every page follows that path. The popular image is neater than reality. Family wealth, patronage, health, opportunity, and politics shape what becomes of them. Some remain household retainers. Others move into administration, religious life, marriage alliances, or service elsewhere. Today, they only want warm fingers. The instructor shows them how to hold the wooden blades without gripping too tightly. Cold hands tire quickly, and stiffness reduces control. He ends the exercise earlier than planned after one boy begins shivering visibly. Practical judgment defeats heroic ambition. Near the stable, a group of smaller children has built a fortress from packed snow. Twigs form towers. Pebbles mark the gate. A feather stands above the central mound like a banner. One child attacks with a snowball. The wall collapses. A fierce argument follows over whether the assault was honourable. Their rules appear complicated, deeply serious, and entirely invented. You listen for a moment while they debate surrender terms. Medieval diplomacy begins early. A stable dog joins the siege, seizes the feather, and runs. All sides unite instantly in pursuit. The war ends because a more entertaining crisis has arrived. Such peace treaties are highly effective. You turn toward the nursery chamber, where the coughing child now rests. The room is warmer than before. A brazier glows near the bed, while a nurse keeps the shutters firmly closed. The air feels close. Too many people share it. Crowded winter rooms can encourage illness to spread through a household. Children are especially vulnerable to respiratory infections, fevers, digestive disease, and poor nutrition. Medieval caregivers recognize symptoms and patterns. Though they cannot identify bacteria or viruses, they understand danger through experience. The child's forehead is warm, his cheeks are flushed, and his breathing sounds rough. A cup beside the bed contains warm ale mixed with honey and herbs. The nurse lifts it carefully. He drinks 2 small mouthfuls, then turns away. She does not force him. Instead, she moistens his lips and adjusts the blanket around his shoulders. You hear the fire settle. No one speaks for several breaths. Current researchers cannot always determine how accurately medieval records distinguish childhood diseases from adult illnesses. Chroniclers may describe fever, swelling, rash, weakness, or coughing without enough detail for modern diagnosis. The word survive, certainty does not. A younger girl enters holding a cloth doll. She wants to give it to the sick child. The nurse hesitates, then allows her to place it near the pillow. The doll wears a tiny blue dress. Its face is stitched with 2 uneven eyes and a red mouth. A little pouch of dried lavender has been sewn inside, giving it a faint, clean scent. This is a thoughtful gift. The girl does not stay. Illness changes the rules of closeness. In another chamber, an infant is being wrapped securely in cloth bands. Swaddling is widely practiced in many medieval communities, though methods differ. Caregivers believe firm wrapping supports the body, keeps the child warm, and prevents uncontrolled movement. Not every infant remains wrapped constantly. Practice varies by household. region, and age. One curious belief holds that the shape of a young body can be influenced by careful binding and positioning. Such ideas grow from inherited medical theories and observations, though their application ranges from gentle support to uncomfortable restraint. The nurse checks every fold. The baby protests briefly, then sleeps. You move toward the chapel school, where 2 children recite prayers before a small painted image. Religious instruction begins early because faith structures daily life, family duty, and expectations about death. Death is never far from medieval childhood, yet neither is affection. Parents mourn children intensely, despite old claims that frequent loss makes them emotionally distant. Letters, memorials, household expenses, prayers, and burial choices reveal grief, care, and attachment. People do not love less because life is uncertain. They may love more anxiously. As evening gathers, the children return to their separate places. Noble children move toward private chambers. Pages prepare to serve at supper. Servant children carry bowls, collect rushes, and help younger siblings. The snow fortress outside loses its shape beneath fresh flakes. The carved horse emerges again after lessons, still missing one leg. A page hides damp gloves near the kitchen fire. The girl with the cloth doll asks whether the coughing child will recover. Promises, a nurse says he's resting. For tonight, that answer must be enough. You pause in the corridor as a lullaby drifts through the nursery door. Beyond it, children sleep beneath fur, wool, patched blankets, or shared cloaks. Their futures differ sharply, but winter presses the same darkness against every shutter. Some dream of horses, some dream of bread. Some simply breathe through fever, while an adult listens nearby. The castle protects childhood imperfectly. Still, within its cold rooms, people teach, scold, carry, mend, comfort, and hope. The nursery grows quiet behind you. Far below, another part of the castle remains awake. Hooves shift against timber. Chains knock softly against wooden posts. A dog barks once, then settles after hearing a familiar voice. You follow the sound toward the stables. The passage slopes downward, and the air becomes thicker with each step. Smoke fades beneath stronger smells of hay, leather, manure, damp earth, and warm animal breath. The scent is heavy, but not unpleasant after the cold stone corridors above. Heat gathers here differently. It comes from bodies. Inside the stable, horses stand in narrow stalls beneath a dark roof. Their coats gleam in lantern light. Steam rises from a grey gelding as a groom rubs him with twisted straw. Working moisture from the hair, the horse turns one large eye toward you. His breath touches your hand, warm and grassy. You feel the soft movement of his nostrils before he withdraws, more interested in the empty manger than in your company. Food concerns him too. A castle depends upon horses for travel, messages, hauling, hunting, ceremony, and war. Different animals perform different work. And not every impressive horse is a battlefield charger. Pack horses and cart animals may contribute more to daily survival than the noble mount everyone admires. Winter makes those distinctions urgent. Hay should have been cut and dried during summer. Oats, barley, beans, and other fodder may supplement it according to local practice and expense. During a bad harvest, every bundle fed to a horse is food unavailable for another animal or field. The groom lifts a forkful of hay. It looks coarse and slightly dusty. He shakes it before placing it in the manger, checking for mould and spoiled stems. The horse begins eating immediately, pulling strands with slow, powerful movements. Another stall remains empty. You ask about it. The groom says an older mare was sold before the roads became impassable. She had begun losing weight, and the household could no longer justify her ration. His voice remains practical. though he does not look at the vacant space. Decisions leave shapes behind. At the far end, a smaller horse stamps impatiently. One front hoof has a crack near the edge. A farrier kneels beside it, running his thumb over the damaged horn. The horse shifts. The farrier speaks gently and lifts the leg again. Hoof care is constant work because wet ground, ice, poor roads, and hard surfaces can cause injury. Shoes may protect some animals, though methods and needs vary. Iron is not the only concern. A shoe must fit properly. Nails must avoid sensitive tissue, and the hoof itself must remain healthy. A valuable horse can become nearly useless through neglect that begins with something very small. The farrier trims the damaged edge. The scraping sound is dry and rhythmic. Tiny curls fall onto the floor. The smell resembles cut fingernails mixed with earth and smoke. You watch closely. No one hurries him. Near the stable door, several saddles hang from wooden pegs. Leather straps have been cleaned and greased to prevent cracking. A groom checks each buckle because cold makes old leather less forgiving. One strap has been repaired with cord. It may hold, it may fail. Castle records frequently list payments for oats, hay, horseshoes, harness repairs, and stable workers. These plain expenses reveal how much effort lies behind a mounted nobleman crossing a courtyard with effortless dignity. The horse receives no credit. The groom receives little more. You move toward a side enclosure where two cattle stand close together. Their breath clouds the air. One chews slowly, though little remains in the trough. Cattle provide traction, milk, hides, meat, and manure. Oxen are especially valuable for heavy hauling and ploughing. When fodder fails, losing them harms both the present household and the next planting season. That makes slaughter a difficult choice. Killing a weak animal may preserve meat before it dies uselessly. Keeping it alive may protect future work and breeding. Each option consumes something the household needs. The estate officials must judge carefully. Evidence from different regions suggests livestock losses during the famine years were severe, but local totals remain difficult to reconstruct. Accounts sometimes record purchases and deaths without explaining causes. Weather, disease, hunger, and forced sales can blur together. The animals do not leave written testimony. Their bones tell only part of the story. A dairymaid enters carrying a small pail. She sits beside one cow and begins milking. Though the stream is thin, cold, poor fodder, stress, and illness can reduce production sharply. The milk strikes the bucket in a faint rhythm. There will not be much. Fresh milk may go to children, the sick, or the noble table. It can also become butter or cheese, which lasts longer under suitable conditions. In scarcity, every choice balances immediate nourishment against future usefulness. The maid covers the pail. A stable cat appears from behind a barrel and watches her with intense devotion. It is lean, striped, and missing a small piece from one ear. No milk is offered. The cat follows anyway. Cats earn their place by hunting mice and rats near grain. Fodder and kitchens. Medieval attitudes toward them are mixed. They can be useful companions, ordinary working animals, or subjects of suspicion in certain stories and sermons. This cat seems unconcerned with theology. It disappears beneath a stack of straw after hearing movement. A sudden squeak follows. You decide the arrangement is functioning. Outside the stable, a covered pen holds chickens close together. Their feathers puff against the cold. The air smells sharp with droppings, dust, and old straw. Egg production slows during dark winter months. Chickens still matter because they convert scraps into food and require less space than larger livestock. Their eggs, meat, and feathers all have value. Yet foxes, rats, cold, and hunger threaten them constantly. A young servant scatters grain sparingly. The birds rush forward, pecking with frantic speed. One bold hen jumps onto the edge of the basket and is removed with practiced annoyance. She returns at once. Persistence is her chief accomplishment. A stranger custom sometimes appears in advice about poultry care. Certain householders add herbs, warm mash, or even small amounts of ale residue to feed during cold weather. Whether every recommendation was practical is uncertain, though nothing edible was dismissed casually. The hen would probably accept all theories. Across the yard, barking erupts near the kennels. You approach beneath a covered walkway. Several dogs crowd behind a low barrier, wagging, whining, and pressing their noses through gaps in the wood. Their shapes vary greatly. Two are lean hunting hounds. Another is heavier and broad-headed, suited for guarding. A smaller dog circles impatiently near a sleeping attendant, who opens one eye but refuses to rise. Dogs serve many purposes within noble households. They assist in hunting, guard property, control vermin, warn of strangers, and offer companionship. High-status hunting dogs may receive names, specialized training, and careful treatment. Their food reveals rank too. Favored hounds might receive bread, meat scraps, broth, or specially prepared mixtures. Lesser dogs survive on bones, leftovers, and whatever they can obtain without provoking the cooks. One hound wears a decorated leather collar, another has rope. Both watch the same kitchen door. A kennel servant checks their paws for cuts caused by ice and frozen ground. He rubs grease into one cracked pad while the dog leans against his knee. The animal sighs deeply. Its trust feels immediate. Near the mews, the atmosphere changes again. The building is quieter, warmer, and more carefully controlled. Hunting birds perch in dimness. Somewhere in small leather hoods, a falconer moves among them. Falcons and hawks are valuable symbols of rank, but they are also living creatures requiring skilled care. Their diet, feathers, feet, weight, and temperament must be watched closely. One bird shifts on its perch. You hear the soft scrape of talons against wood. The falconer explains that too much food can make a bird unwilling to hunt, while too little weakens it dangerously. Training depends upon precise judgment and a close understanding of behavior. The winter limits flying. Snow, wind, and weakened game reduce opportunities. Still, the birds must remain healthy for the season ahead. Their continued care is a statement that the household expects spring to come. That expectation matters. You leave the mews as evening settles across the yard. The animals continue their separate rhythms. Horses chew, cattle breathe, chickens mutter beneath feathers. Dogs turn in circles before lying down. Each one consumes precious stores. Each one also offers labor, food, protection, status, or companionship. The castle is not occupied by people alone. It survives through a crowded alliance of species, all depending upon hay, grain, warmth, patience, and human judgment. Some animals will endure, others will be sold, slaughtered, lost, or quietly remembered beside an empty stall. You return toward the inner buildings with stable warmth clinging to your cloak. Behind you, the grey horse pulls the last strands from his manger. His chewing slows. The trough is empty. The stable door closes behind you, and the animal warmth fades almost at once. A bell sounds from the chapel tower, low and measured, carrying across the frozen courtyard. Its vibration seems to linger in the stone beneath your boots. Servants pause briefly. Guards turn their heads, and a groom removes his cap before returning to work. You follow the bell. The chapel stands within the inner ward, smaller than the great hall but more carefully finished. Snow gathers along its roof and rests upon carved ledges above the doorway. A narrow window glows with candlelight, casting a pale golden patch across the ground. Inside, the air is dim and cool. Wax, incense, damp wool, and old wood mingle beneath the vaulted ceiling. The familiar castle smoke is weaker here, replaced by the sweeter scent of resin drifting from a small burner near the altar. Several people kneel already. The noble family occupies places near the front. Household officers gather behind them, followed by servants, guards, children, and others able to leave their duties. Rank shapes the arrangement. Though everyone faces the same altar, you take a place near the rear. The stone floor presses cold through your knees. A woven mat softens it slightly, but not enough to hide the hardness. Around you, cloaks rustle and someone coughs into a sleeve. The priest begins the office. His Latin moves through the chapel in a steady cadence. Many listeners understand only portions of the words, yet the rhythm is familiar. Repetition offers its own kind of shelter. Daily worship orders medieval life. Bells mark prayer, labour, meals, and rest. Sundays and feast days shape the year, while fasts influence what people eat. Confession, charity, relics, blessings, processions, and prayers connect ordinary hardship to a larger spiritual world. Faith is not separate from daily survival. It explains it, judges it, and sometimes makes it bearable. The priest prays for those suffering from hunger, cold, sickness, and fear. He asks protection for travellers, mercy for the dead, and strength for the household. No one moves. The famine has made every phrase immediate. Some people may see the weather as divine punishment for sin. Others may understand it as a test, a warning, or part of a mysterious order beyond human knowledge. Natural explanations and religious interpretations do not always compete as sharply as modern minds expect. A person can notice endless rain and still seek meaning in it. The sermon is brief. The priest speaks about charity, patience, and the danger of hoarding. His voice remains gentle. Though several listeners glance toward the steward keeps his eyes lowered. Words about generosity become uncomfortable when granaries are thin. You remember the hungry people gathering near the gate. The Lord's household has begun distributing smaller loaves on fixed days. That decision now feels less like accounting and more like a public measure of conscience. The priest does not name anyone. He does not need to. A servant near you holds a string of prayer beads between cracked fingers. She moves one bead after another, silently repeating familiar words. Her hands smell faintly of onions and lye. Even beneath the incense, devotion arrives carrying labour. Prayer beads can be simple or elaborate. Some are made from wood, bone, glass, amber, coral, or precious materials. Their value reveals status, but their purpose remains steady, guiding attention through repeated prayer. The servant's beads are plain wood. She holds them carefully. Near the altar rests a small reliquary, fashioned from metal and decorated with coloured glass. It is said to contain a fragment associated with a saint. Whether the fragment can be verified matters less to those kneeling before it than the hope surrounding it. Relics connect sacred history to physical touch. People travel long distances to visit famous shrines, yet even a modest household chapel may possess a treasured object. During illness or crisis, such items can become the centre of petitions, vows, and processions. The priest lifts the reliquary. Candlelight flashes across its surface. A child near the front stares at it with complete attention. Perhaps he believes it will stop the snow. Perhaps he hopes it will cure the coughing child upstairs. Adults hope more carefully. They still hope. One lesser-known custom involves touching cloth, jewellery, or personal objects to a shrine or relic, allowing the item to carry some association with the holy place. Such objects might later comfort the sick or protect a traveller. The boundary between symbol and remedy remains soft. You watch a noblewoman press a folded ribbon near the reliquary after the service. She gives it to the nurse beside her, who places it inside her sleeve. No explanation is offered. You know where it will go. The coughing child's room waits above. As worship ends, several people remain kneeling. A guard whispers a prayer before beginning the night watch. A maid lights a thin candle for a brother travelling somewhere beyond the castle. An older servant murmurs the name of a daughter who died years earlier. Private grief gathers quietly. Death is close enough to be familiar, but familiarity does not erase fear. Medieval Christianity offers rituals for dying, burial, remembrance, and prayers for the soul. These practices give shape to loss when ordinary language fails. The chapel preserves names longer than conversation does. A side table holds wax tablets listing intentions for prayer. Some request healing. Others concern safe childbirth, missing relatives, debts, journeys, or forgiveness. You notice one asking for better weather. The request is written plainly. No poetry is necessary. Beyond the chapel walls, the wind presses snow against the narrow windows. The sound is soft, like handfuls of sand brushing glass. Inside, the candles tremble. A sudden draught causes one flame to fail. A sacristan relights it from another candle, shielding the wick with his palm. The gesture is small and practiced. Light passes from one flame to the next. Perhaps that is why it feels reassuring. The historical record cannot reveal how deeply each individual believed every teaching he or she repeated. Sermons, wills, church court documents, and devotional objects show strong religious participation. But inward certainty remains hidden. Some people may have doubted, some may have bargained with heaven, some may have followed custom while feeling nothing at all. The chapel contains all of them. Outside, you meet the chaplain carrying a basket toward the gatehouse. Inside are pieces of bread, several onions, and a small jar of broth. He is taking them to a widow and 2 children admitted into a shelter near the outer wall. The gift is modest. It may be their only hot food today. Charity forms part of Christian duty, especially through almsgiving, hospitality, and care for the vulnerable. Monasteries, parishes, hospitals, guilds, nobles, and individuals all participate, though resources and generosity vary greatly. Good intentions remain limited by supply. The chaplain cannot feed an entire countryside. He can carry one basket. You walk beside him through the courtyard. Snow creaks beneath your steps. The basket gives off the warm smell of onions and broth, faint but unmistakable, at the gatehouse. 2 guards make room. The widow waits inside a sheltered chamber, wrapped in a patched cloak. One child sleeps against her shoulder. The other watches the basket with wide, exhausted eyes. The chaplain speaks softly. He gives no sermon. The widow crosses herself before accepting the food. Her hands shake as she lifts the jar, perhaps from cold, perhaps from hunger, perhaps from relief. The child reaches for the bread. She stops him until thanks are given. Habit survives desperation. You leave them and return toward the chapel. Evening has deepened, and the courtyard lamps appear smaller against the snow. The bell rings again, marking another hour. Somewhere within the castle, a servant whispers a charm learned from her grandmother. A soldier carries a blessed token beneath his shirt. A clerk studies the stars for signs, though clouds hide them tonight. Official teaching does not erase older customs. People may combine prayers with herbal protections, omens, dreams, protective symbols, and local traditions. Clergy sometimes condemn these habits, tolerate them, or reinterpret them according to circumstance. Fear is inventive. So is comfort. You enter the chapel once more before the doors close. Only 3 candles remain burning near the altar. Their light barely reaches the rear wall. The silence feels deep now. You hear wax drip, timber settle, and wind sigh around the roof. The stone beneath your hand is cold, yet the small flames hold their ground. Winter has not changed. The granary has not filled. The sick child has not recovered simply because prayers were spoken. Still, people rise from their knees with steadier faces. They return to kitchens, walls, chambers, and stables carrying something that cannot be weighed by the steward. Perhaps it is faith, perhaps it is habit, Perhaps, tonight, the difference does not matter. The chapel doors close behind you, leaving the courtyard dim and blue with evening. For several breaths, the castle seems unusually still. Then a cough rises from an upper passage, followed by another from somewhere near the kitchens. A servant hurries across the yard carrying folded cloths and a covered basin. You follow her inside. The corridor smells of smoke, damp wool, vinegar, and something bitterly herbal. Warmth gathers near one doorway, though the air there feels heavy and close. A brazier glows beside the wall, and steam curls from a pot placed above it. This is where the sick are being tended. Not every castle possesses a dedicated infirmary. Ill people may remain in private chambers, servant rooms, gatehouse shelters, or any space that can be made warm and quiet. Rank influence is comfort, but illness crosses boundaries with little respect for household order. You enter a narrow room. 3 pallets lie along the walls. One holds the coughing child you saw earlier. Another supports an elderly servant with flushed cheeks. On the third rests a young guard whose feet have been wrapped in clean strips of linen. The room is crowded. Heat from the brazier presses against your face, while cold still rises through the floor. The shutters are closed against the wind, trapping smoke, breath, and the sour smell of fever. A healer kneels beside the guard. She removes one layer of cloth and examines his toes carefully. The skin looks pale and swollen, with patches of angry red. He winces when she touches them. Frost injuries are familiar in severe winters. People understand that frozen limbs must be warmed, protected, and watched. Though treatment varies widely, sudden heat can worsen damage while rubbing may injure fragile skin. Experience sometimes teaches caution even without a modern explanation. The healer uses warm cloths. She does not place his feet directly beside the brazier. Instead, she wraps them gradually and lifts them onto folded blankets. The guard grips the edge of the pallet but makes no sound. His boots lie nearby. The leather is cracked, soaked, and stiff with dried mud. Cloth stuffed inside is frozen into hard folds. A soldier may defend walls with courage, yet wet footwear can defeat him more efficiently than an enemy. You move towards the child. His breathing is rougher tonight. The nurse sits close, counting each rise of his chest. A cup of honeyed drink rests beside the bed, untouched since the last attempt. She places a cool cloth on his forehead. Medieval caregivers often judge illness through visible signs: pulse, urine, appetite, sleep, pain, breathing, and changes in the skin. Medical theory commonly interprets health through the balance of bodily humours, but practical observation remains central at the bedside. The nurse knows this child well. She notices every difference. A physician has not arrived because the roads remain blocked. Even wealthy households cannot summon skilled help instantly during bad weather. Local healers, surgeons, clergy, experienced women, and household servants must manage what they can. The castle depends upon whoever is present. Near the window, a maid crushes garlic with salt and herbs. The mixture will become a poultice for the elderly servant's chest. Its smell spreads quickly, sharp enough to sting your eyes. The servant complains weakly. The maid replies that the remedy need not smell pleasant to be useful. Her answer has the confident tone of someone who expects obedience from illness itself. A curious treatment sometimes recommended for respiratory troubles involves warming aromatic herbs near the patient or placing them in cloth bundles close to the body. The scent may offer comfort, even when the underlying theory is uncertain. The room now smells like a kitchen defending a fortress. You sit beside the elderly man. His skin feels hot, though he shivers beneath 2 blankets. Sweat darkens his hair near the temples. He asks for water, then takes only 1 sip before turning away. Fever drains strength quickly, so does poor nourishment. During famine, weakened bodies struggle against infections that might otherwise remain manageable. Crowding, smoke, cold dampness, limited hygiene, and nutritional stress combine quietly. No single danger acts alone. The household understands parts of this pattern. People know sickness spreads more easily in crowded places, though explanations differ. Some blame corrupted air, divine displeasure, imbalance, seasonal influence, or contact with contaminated objects. Observation and belief overlap. A servant opens the shutter slightly. Cold air enters at once. Fresh but cruel, the healer allows it for only a brief moment before ordering the opening closed. Ventilation can ease stale air, yet too much chill threatens patients already shivering. Every remedy has a cost. You hear the coughing child stir, the nurse lifts him carefully and supports his back while he drinks. He swallows once, coughs, then manages another small mouthful. That is enough for now. She lowers him slowly and wipes the cup. Her movements remain calm, though her jaw has tightened. No one names the possibility of death. The silence names it for them. Elsewhere in the castle, illness must be sorted according to urgency. A cut hand may wait. A fever may not. A woman in labour may require every experienced attendant available. A guard unable to stand may leave a gap in the watch. Care becomes another form of rationing. You follow the healer into an adjoining chamber. Shelves hold jars, folded bandages, dried plants, animal fats, honey, vinegar, wine, and small tools. Some containers are carefully labelled. Others are known only by position and habit. The healer opens a wooden box. Inside lie a lancet, a small saw, needles, thread, probes, and several knives. Surgical instruments are simple but specialized. A trained practitioner may clean wounds, set bones, drain swellings, stitch cuts, or remove damaged tissue. The tools shine faintly. You are grateful they remain unused tonight. She selects a small cup instead. Bloodletting is widely practiced within medieval medicine, based upon theories of bodily balance. Yet its timing, amount, and purpose differ between practitioners. Some patients may feel temporary relief, while others become weaker. The question of how frequently ordinary castle residents actually received such treatment cannot be answered neatly. Prescriptive medical texts describe ideal methods, but household practice may depend upon access, cost, confidence, and local custom. The healer leaves the cup on the shelf. The elderly servant is already too weak. She chooses broth instead. Back in the main room, a kitchen maid arrives carrying a covered bowl. Steam escapes when the cloth is lifted. The broth contains onions, herbs, and a little chicken fat. Its smell is gentle. The patients receive only small portions. A sick stomach may reject rich food, and supplies remain limited. The nurse feeds the child with a wooden spoon, waiting patiently between each taste. One spoonful stays down, then another. A quiet relief passes through the room. Near the brazier, the guard begins feeling pain in his feet as warmth returns. He curses under his breath, then apologizes when he notices the child. The healer smiles faintly. Pain may mean the tissue still lives. She checks the wrappings again and tells him he will not return to the wall tomorrow. He protests that the watch is already short. She does not argue. She simply says no. Authority takes unexpected forms beside a sickbed. The night deepens. A priest enters to offer prayers, but he does not interrupt the work. He blesses the patients, speaks softly with the elderly servant, and leaves a small candle near the doorway. The flame adds little warmth. It adds something else. You remain while the room settles into a slow pattern. Cloths are changed. Broth is offered. Breathing is counted. The brazier receives another coal. Someone dozes for several minutes, then wakes at the slightest cough. Care continues without ceremony. The coughing child finally sleeps. His breathing remains uneven, but less strained than before. The nurse rests one hand on the blanket near his shoulder, feeling each movement through the wool. The elderly servant murmurs a prayer. The guard stares at the ceiling, exhausted by returning sensation. Around them, the castle carries on with supper, watches, accounts, and whispered conversations, yet this small room has become its own world, governed by breath, heat, patience, and the next uncertain hour. You step toward the door, behind you. The healer lifts another cloth from warm water. Steam rises around her hands and disappears into the smoky air. No cure is certain, no effort is wasted. The healer closes the sick room door behind you. Outside, the corridor feels cooler and strangely ordinary. A servant carries folded blankets toward the nursery. 2 guards pass in the opposite direction, speaking quietly about the night watch somewhere below. A wooden bowl falls and rolls across stone. Life continues beside illness. You descend toward the lower hall, where a different kind of tension has gathered. Voices rise near the steward's table. They are controlled, but only just. A kitchen servant stands before him. Beside her waits a young groom with wet hair and a torn sleeve. 2 guards remain near the doorway, not threatening anyone, though their presence makes the room feel smaller. A loaf has disappeared. It was counted after baking, assigned to the evening meal, and noticed missing before distribution. In an easier season, such a loss might bring irritation. During this winter, one missing loaf can become an accusation, a punishment, and a warning to everyone watching. The steward asked the servant to explain. She says the bread was present when she left the pantry. The groom admits entering later, but claims he went only to collect salt for an injured horse. Neither speaks confidently. Hunger makes innocence sound suspicious. You stand near the wall as the questioning continues. The room smells of wax, cold ash, wool, and those last traces of supper. A rushlight flickers beside the steward, bending whenever the door opens. The steward keeps his voice level. Household discipline depends upon hierarchy. Stewards, marshals, chamber officials, cooks, and senior servants may supervise conduct within their assigned areas. The Lord remains the highest authority, but lesser disputes are often settled below him. Most trouble is not dramatic. It concerns work, food, wages, damaged property, insults, absences, broken tools, and duties left unfinished. A castle needs rules because it contains many people sharing limited space and unequal privileges. Winter sharpens every complaint. The steward asks who else entered the pantry. A scullion remembers seeing a child near the door. Another servant claims the groom has taken scraps before. The groom objects, saying scraps are not loaves. That distinction is legally modest. Emotionally, it is enormous. The kitchen servant begins to cry. She turns away quickly, wiping her face with the back of one hand. She knows that losing responsibility for the bread store could mean demotion, dismissal, or public disgrace. The steward notices. He does not soften. Instead, he orders the pantry searched again. You follow 2 servants into the kitchen passage. Shelves are checked, baskets lifted, cloths unfolded, and empty barrels tilted toward the light. Flour dust hangs in the air. Mice scatter behind a chest. Nothing appears. Then a boy reaches beneath a low bench. His hand closes around a hard brown object. It is half the missing loaf, wrapped in a scrap of cloth and pushed against the wall. The room becomes silent. Only half remains. The steward asks who hid it. No one answers. The boy holding the bread looks frightened, though he is not accused. Crumbs lead towards a narrow service stair. A dog may have carried it. A child may have taken it. An adult may have eaten the other half and hidden what remained. Proof is thin, suspicion is plentiful. The steward chooses not to name a culprit. Instead, he orders the pantry locked more carefully and reduces the kitchen staff's extra ration for 2 days. A murmur passes through the servants. Collective punishment avoids condemning one person without evidence. but it spreads resentment across many innocent stomachs. The kitchen servant lowers her head. The groom clenches his jaw. Justice has restored order. It has not restored peace. Written household regulations often describe fines, dismissal, loss of privileges, corporal punishment, or confinement for misconduct. Actual enforcement, however, could vary according to rank, custom, need, and the personality of those in charge. A skilled worker might receive leniency. A powerless stranger might not. The neat rules preserved in ordinances rarely capture every compromise made inside a cold, understaffed household. You leave the pantry dispute and enter the outer hall. Another disagreement waits there. 3 villagers have come to petition the Lord's officer. One claims that his neighbour cut branches from woodland reserved for the estate. The accused man admits taking wood, but says his children had no fire. The first villager insists everyone is cold. He followed the rules. The accused man looks toward the floor. Woodland rights are complicated. Tenants may hold customary permission to gather fallen branches, graze animals, cut turf, or take limited timber. These rights differ greatly between manors, and boundaries can become sources of bitter conflict. A branch is not merely a branch. It may represent law, survival, rent, and status. The officer asks whether the wood was fallen. The man says some of it was. That answer means some was cut. The officer knows it. He orders the man to work 3 days repairing fences once the weather improves. No fine is imposed because the family has no money to spare. The gathered wood will remain with them. The first villager protests. He says obedience is made in poorer than theft. The officer looks tired. Fairness becomes slippery when rules punish those who follow them, and mercy rewards those who cannot. Yet taking the wood back would leave children cold. The decision stands. The complaining villager departs without bowing. His anger follows him through the doorway, near the gatehouse. A guard brings another case. A traveller admitted for 1 night has remained for 4. He claims the road is unsafe, his horse is lame, and no inn nearby has food. All of this may be true. He has also begun gambling with servants. You find him sitting on an upturned barrel, rolling carved knuckle bones onto a cloth. Several men watch closely. A few small coins and buttons lie between them as stakes. The traveller smiles when the guard approaches. His smile changes nothing. Games of chance are common sources of entertainment and conflict. Dice, knuckle bones, cards in later periods, and wagers on contests can pass long evenings. Moralists repeatedly condemn gambling because it encourages debt, quarrels, cheating, and neglected duties. Repeated condemnation usually means repeated enjoyment. One odd method of cheating involves weighted or altered dice. Though proving such fraud requires close inspection, the traveller's pieces are collected and examined. One lands unusually often on the same side. The guard cuts it open. A tiny plug of denser material has been inserted within. The watching men groan. The traveller claims he purchased the pieces that way. Nobody believes him, though certainty is impossible. The guard confiscates his winnings and orders him to leave at first light. His horse will receive basic care. He will receive no further hospitality. The distinction is deliberate. You return to the lower hall as a final dispute begins. 2 laundresses argue over access to the warmest drying space. One has linen from the noble chambers. The other carries cloths from the sick room. Both loads matter. The housekeeper arrives before the argument grows louder. She sends the sick room cloths nearer the fire and orders the noble linen moved to racks in the passage. Rank yields to danger. No one complains openly. The decision reveals how household authority can bend without breaking. Rules remain strong, but necessity rearranges them. A lord's sheet may wait. Fever cannot. The castle's legal world is layered. Manorial courts judge tenants. Royal or regional authorities claim wider jurisdiction. Household officers manage conduct inside the walls. Clergy handle certain moral and religious matters. These systems overlap imperfectly. A stolen loaf may be a domestic offence, a criminal act, or a desperate meal. Cut wood may be theft under one rule and customary survival under another. A delayed servant may be lazy, sick, frightened, or trapped by snow. Every judgment selects one story, others remain hidden. As evening settles, the lower hall empties, the groom returns to the stable, the kitchen servant resumes counting bowls. The traveller sits alone near the gate, his false gaming piece split open beside him. The steward closes his account book, his face reveals no satisfaction. Order has been maintained through warnings, lost rations, extra labour, confiscation and compromise. No chains were needed, no dramatic sentence echoed through the hall. Still, people will remember. The groom will remember being suspected. The obedient villager will remember mercy shown to his neighbour. The kitchen staff will remember hunger imposed without proof. Justice survives through authority. Trust survives more delicately. You walk back toward the inner rooms. Behind you, keys turn into the pantry lock. Ahead, the sickroom lamp still burns beneath the door. The castle remains secure. Inside its walls, every person measures what security costs. The pantry key turns before sunrise. You hear it from the passage, followed by the scrape of a chest and the soft counting of loaves. Today, the castle prepares for a feast, though the word feels generous beside the shrinking stores. Still, ceremony must continue. The occasion may honour a saint's day, a family anniversary, or a seasonal observance long fixed in the household calendar. Cancelling it entirely could look fearful. Holding it lavishly would be reckless. So the feast becomes a careful performance. In the kitchens, movement begins earlier than usual. Fires are fed, knives sharpened, and wooden bowls arranged in rows. The room fills with steam, smoke, and the sharp scent of onions frying in animal fat. You stand near the main work table. A cook opens a small locked box containing spices. Pepper, ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and saffron can travel great distances before reaching a noble kitchen. Their cost makes them signs of wealth as well as flavour. Only tiny amounts will be used. The cook measures each pinch with serious attention. A little spice can make an ordinary dish seem festive. It can also remind visitors that the household still commands trade, money, and refinement. Appearance enters the pot. Nearby, a servant cleans a preserved fish. Its skin is stiff, and salt crystals cling to the surface. The fish has been soaked to soften it, though the smell remains powerful enough to dominate the room. Another servant grinds almonds. Almond milk is useful during fasting periods when animal products may be restricted. It also appears in sauces, soups, and refined dishes throughout wealthy households. The paste forms slowly beneath the stone. Water is added. Then the mixture is strained through cloth. The resulting liquid looks pale and smooth, almost delicate within the smoky kitchen. Such delicacy requires labour. The feast will not offer endless courses. Instead, the cooks plan several dishes that can create variety from limited ingredients. Grain becomes both pottage and pastry, preserved fruit sweetens a sauce. Bones enrich broth before returning to the pot again. Nothing leaves without purpose. A capon has been reserved for the high table. Its skin is rubbed with salt and herbs before roasting. Lower tables will receive fish, bread, pottage, cheese, and perhaps small pieces of meat mixed into shared dishes. The difference will be visible. It always is. Feasting in noble households reinforces hierarchy through seating, service, food quality, and ritual. Guests understand their position partly by what reaches them and how quickly it arrives. The hall itself becomes a map of status. You leave the kitchen and enter the great hall, where servants are changing the floor rushes. Bundles of fresher material have been brought from storage and spread across the central space. The scent is grassy and faintly sweet. It cannot fully conceal smoke, dogs, damp clothing, and old food, but it tries with admirable courage. A few herbs are scattered among the rushes near the high table. The tapestries are brushed, benches are wiped, metal cups and serving vessels receive extra polishing, especially those likely to catch firelight. The household cannot increase its food stores, but it can brighten what remains. Candles are counted next. Wax candles go near the noble family and chapel guests. Cheaper tallow lights serve the rest of the hall. Their smell will grow stronger as the evening continues. One servant trims every wick. Another places water nearby in case a flame catches cloth or rushes. Celebration must remain alert to disaster. A musician arrives carrying a small harp beneath his cloak. 2 others bring pipes and a drum. Their boots are wet, and one man's fingers are too cold to tune properly. They are led toward the kitchen fire. Payment may come partly in food, lodging, or coin. Travelling performers depend upon roads, patronage, and hospitality, all of which suffer during famine. Their presence is therefore meaningful. Music suggests confidence. It also offers hungry people something to think about besides hunger. By late afternoon, guests begin entering the hall. Local officials, minor landholders, clergy, and household dependents take their places. Cloaks drip near the doorway. Voices rise beneath the rafters. The room feels fuller than usual. Firelight warms the tapestries and hides the frost around the shutters. Cups are filled before anyone can study the portions too closely. Servants move briskly, creating the impression of abundance through speed. You take your familiar place near the middle. The Lord enters with his family. Everyone rises. He wears a dark robe lined with fur, while his wife carries a narrow girdle decorated with metalwork. Their clothing is not new, but it has been cleaned, repaired, and arranged to look its finest. The coughing child is absent. His empty place is explained as precaution, not danger. The nurse remains with him upstairs. The feast begins with prayer. The chaplain gives thanks for shelter, food, and fellowship. His words are measured, neither triumphant nor sorrowful. Everyone knows the season. The first dish is pottage enriched with almond milk and spices. It tastes smoother than the daily version. With ginger warming the tongue, you eat slowly. The bowl is not full, but the flavour creates the illusion of plenty around you. Conversation becomes more animated. A second serving brings fish with a sauce of onions and dried fruit. The combination is sweet, sharp, and salty. Medieval elite cuisine often favours layered tastes that modern diners might not expect. Sweetness does not belong only to dessert. Spices, vinegar, fruit, wine, and meat can share one dish. Recipes seek balance according to contemporary ideas of health, refinement, and appetite. The result is surprisingly comforting. At the high table, the capon appears decorated with herbs. Applause follows, though everyone can see it is smaller than the bird served in better years. The steward has placed it on a broad platter. Size can be suggested by presentation. A cook has arranged bread, greens, and carved vegetables around it from a distance. The dish looks generous near you. A clerk whispers that the platter contains more decoration than supper. His neighbour hides a smile behind his cup. Gentle sarcasm survives even here. The musicians begin. The harp sounds first, quiet and clear above the murmur. Pipes join, followed by the soft beat of the drum. The melody moves through the hall like warmer air. People listen. Even the servants slow slightly as they pass. A singer tells a story of a knight lost in winter, guided home by a distant bell. The tale includes danger, loyalty, and an improbable horse with better judgment than its rider. Nobody objects to the horse. Storytelling often fills long evenings when darkness arrives early. Professional performers may bring romances, saints' lives, comic tales, songs, riddles and news. Household members also tell stories from memory. Not every performance is solemn. One entertainer balances wooden cups on his head while reciting a complaint about bad ale. The steward watches without smiling until the final line mocks a fictional cook instead. Then he permits himself one laugh. A stranger detail from festive customs is the use of elaborate subtleties. Decorative food pieces shaped like castles, animals, coats of arms, or religious scenes, some are edible, while others mainly display skill and wealth. This household cannot spare sugar for such ambition. The cook creates a modest version from coloured bread paste. It resembles a tiny fortress with uneven towers. A child at the high table is delighted. The steward looks less certain. The little castle is carried around the hall before being placed near the lord. Its walls lean slightly to one side. Nobody mentions it. Real fortresses have survived worse. As cups are refilled, the hall grows louder. Soldiers exchange jokes with grooms. A maid listens to the harp while pretending to adjust a cloth. Two older servants compare this feast with one held many winters ago. Memory improves old meals. It also enlarges them. How closely such celebrations followed ideal household manuals is difficult to establish. Preserved instructions describe orderly courses, precise service, and careful precedence, but ordinary events were probably more flexible. Shortages, late arrivals, illness, and human confusion would have disrupted perfection. Tonight, one servant carries a dish to the wrong table. The error is corrected discreetly. No chronicle will record it. The final course includes cheese, preserved pears, and small honeyed cakes. The cakes are thin enough to bend, yet their sweetness changes the mood immediately. You taste one, honey, spice, and browned flour linger on your tongue. For several breaths, the winter feels distant. That is the feast's true achievement. It cannot refill the granary, heal the sick, or repair the roads. It can remind the household that life contains more than endurance. The Lord raises his cup. He thanks those who guard the walls, tend the sick, prepare food, care for animals, and maintain the estate. His words reach servants who are rarely addressed in public. Some look surprised. The acknowledgement costs nothing. It still matters. Music resumes more softly, candles shorten. The fresh rushes darken beneath spilled ale and muddy feet. Smoke thickens near the rafters, while the fire sinks lower. Guests begin to leave. Each carries a slightly warmer memory into the corridors. Upstairs, a portion of broth and one honeyed cake are taken to the coughing child. The nurse will decide whether he can eat. You remain until the musicians pack their instruments. The tiny bread castle still stands near the high table, leaning bravely beneath the candles. Outside, the deadly winter continues. Inside, for one evening, ceremony has persuaded fear to sit quietly. The feast leaves behind a quieter castle. By morning, the fresh rushes are already flattened near the high table. Wax has hardened in pale drops along the candle stands. A servant finds half a honeyed cake beneath a bench and carries it toward the kitchen with the solemnity of recovered treasure. The result smells sharp and fresh. It tastes almost like spring. The grain carts return on the 5th day. A horn sounds from the wall, followed by a shout that brings half the courtyard toward the gate. The drivers are exhausted. One wheel is cracked, and an ox limps badly. Yet sacks lie beneath the covers. The grain is not abundant. It is enough to change the next calculation. The steward counts each sack before allowing it into storage. Payment has included timber rights, future labour, and promises that will burden the estate later. Survival often borrows from tomorrow. Today, nobody objects. A small portion goes to the bakehouse, another is reserved for seed. The rest is locked away and entered carefully into the accounts. Bread does not become larger immediately. The household has learned caution. Even so, the next morning's loaves smell different. They contain a greater share of wheat and less pea meal. The crust breaks more cleanly beneath your fingers. You chew slowly, around you. People notice without speaking. Relief is quiet when it arrives in measured portions. Beyond the walls, villagers begin repairing ditches and fences. Water must be guided away from fields before seed can be planted. Broken bridges require timber. Roads need stones, brush, and patient labour. The landscape has survived badly. It must now be persuaded to work again. You walk through the gate with a group of labourers. For the first time since your arrival, no snow covers the road completely. Mud clings to your boots, but the ground beneath feels alive rather than frozen. The village looks smaller. One cottage stands empty, its door hanging open. Another roof has collapsed near the chimney. A garden fence has been burned for fuel. Smoke rises from fewer homes. Those who survive step outside to greet the castle workers. Faces appear thinner. Clothing hangs more loosely. Children watch the supply cart with solemn attention. Someone asks about repairing the bridge. A child laughs when the stable dog sneaks beneath the table. The ordinary world returns through ordinary sounds. And now, as the hall grows softer around you, you can let the castle slowly fade. The fire settles into red embers. Voices become low murmurs, then gentle shapes without meaning. Outside, the last snow slips from the shaded wall and disappears into dark soil. You no longer need to count the sacks. You no longer need to watch the gate. The guards remain above, walking beneath a mild sky. Their footsteps pass slowly along the wall, salient distant in the stable. And horses lower their heads. Chickens tuck their beaks beneath their wings. The striped cat curls beside a warm patch of straw. Satisfied with mysteries of its own, within the chambers, curtains close around beds. Wool blankets settle over tired shoulders. A nurse listens once more to a child's breathing and hears it calm. The chapel candle shortens. Wax gathers quietly at its base. Beyond the castle, newly turned fields rest beneath the stars. Seeds lie in darkness, hidden from wind and human worry. They ask only for time, water, warmth, and a little mercy. Your breathing can become slower now. The winter road is far behind you. The gatehouse is closed, not against danger, but against the coolness of night. The stone walls hold their silence. The hearth gives one final crack, then returns to stillness. You rest among people who have endured by sharing labour. Warmth, stories, food, belief and watchfulness. Their world has been harsh, but it has also been tender in small, persistent ways. A repaired sleeve, a bowl of broth, a guarded flame, a hand resting near a sleeping child. Let those quiet images remain as everything else drifts away. The castle grows dim. The fields grow quiet. Spring waits beneath the earth. And you may sleep well.